Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back, way back, into a quiet patch of Greece where the sun refuses to leave the sky too quickly and olive trees lean in as though they're trying to listen. Imagine a grove so still that even the cicadas hesitate before launching into their endless chorus. This is where you find yourself, stepping into the hush of a world that feels older than your thoughts. You probably wouldn't survive here. There's no Wi-Fi, no iced coffee, and the gods have this little habit of smiting first and asking questions never. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And since we're already building this tiny time machine together, go ahead and drop a comment with your location and what time it is right now for you. It's always fun to see where people are listening from. Tokyo at 2 a.m. or maybe a small town in Iowa right before bed. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move deeper into the grove, your sandals brushing against dry leaves, each step releasing the faintest crunch that seems louder than it should. The air has that dusty, sweet smell of sun-warmed herbs, thyme, rosemary, maybe even sage that clings to your clothes as if wanting to travel with you. The olive trees stand in irregular lines, their trunks twisted into spirals like stubborn old men refusing to bend, though of course they've been bending for centuries. The branches hold pockets of shade, but here and there, shafts of late afternoon sunlight pierce through, making the dust look like floating gold threads. At the center, there he sits, Apollo, radiant and casually dangerous, like someone who knows his hair looks good in every century. He isn't standing in the middle of a temple. He's perched on a smooth rock, a lyre in his hands, fingers idly plucking at strings. You almost feel cheated. Shouldn't there be trumpets, thunder, maybe a little special effects budget? And instead it's quiet. So quiet you can hear the faint vibration of each note slide into the air like ripples across still water. You notice that the sound doesn't vanish. It lingers like perfume in a room even after someone has left. The grove seems to hold on to the music. Trees lean slightly inward, cicadas hush again, and you realize that in this strange balance of silence and sound, Apollo is testing something. He isn't performing. He's practicing, or maybe just bored. Gods get bored too. And when they get bored, history tends to happen, usually in inconvenient ways. The lyre itself gleams, its frame carved from polished wood, likely cedar or perhaps something rarer. The strings glint faintly, made from sheep gut that's been twisted so many times it almost looks like spun silver. The sound is delicate, not crashing or overwhelming, but gentle and steady. You can hear both confidence and curiosity in it, like he's asking a question with every pluck. If you tilt your head, you can almost believe you hear words in the music. Not full sentences. Don't worry, you're not going crazy. But the way you can sometimes mistake the wind for someone whispering your name. It's suggestive. Maybe it says stay a little longer. Maybe it says there's more to this than you think. And yes, speaking of whispers, let's pause here with a bit of history. Around this time, or at least in the hazy timeline that myth likes to blur, the Olympic Games were already known. Yes, the real ones with sweaty wrestlers covered in olive oil, not the modern version with branded sneakers. These were sacred events, held every 4 years in Olympia, in honor of Zeus. Everyone knows about the racing, the discus, the let's see who can punch each other the longest without dying. But did you know this is the fun part? That music competitions were eventually added into the mix. That's right, people literally competed in singing and playing instruments, almost like ancient Greece's version of The Voice. Historians still debate whether these contests were as highly respected as athletic events, but the fact remains, music was already slipping into the public arena as something worth judging, ranking and fighting about. Back in the grove, Apollo plucks another sequence, and you swear you can hear laughter hidden inside the notes, a smug kind of laughter. You don't need a degree in divine psychology to know that this is a god enjoying his own reflection in the soundscape. He is the patron of music, after all. If anyone were going to invent a new kind of musical event, it would be him, and probably by accident. But gods don't just perform for themselves. Even if there's no crowd here yet, you can sense invisible company. The rustle in the trees feels too deliberate, like dry leaves gossiping. The air shivers a little, and you wonder if nymphs or spirits are already leaning against the trunks unseen, eavesdropping with mischievous grins. The sound of the lyre is bait, and even the shyest creature in these hills won't be able to resist it for long. The longer you listen, the more textures emerge. First, a light tapping, almost percussive like a bird's claws against bark. Then a softer resonance underneath the melody, as if the stones themselves hum in agreement. Music here doesn't just fill the air. It settles into the bones of the land, weaving into the fibers of things. And the grove, once just a place of trees and dust, begins to feel like a theater without walls. It's funny. You start comparing it to modern concerts. Imagine someone trying to sell tickets to this event. Come sit on a rock, maybe get bitten by mosquitoes, and listen to a glowing man strum sheep guts. Honestly, Ticketmaster would still find a way to charge $250 plus fees. As the sun slides lower, you notice the light wrapping itself around Apollo like it's in on the performance. His hair catches the glow, a halo of gold, while shadows stretch long and deep across the ground. The temperature shifts too. The heat of the day eases, leaving the air soft and breathable, carrying the faint smell of olives and sun-baked earth. Somewhere in the distance, a goat bleats, a reminder that even in myth, ordinary farm life is happening just off stage. Apollo hums under his breath, a sound so low it almost merges with the strings. The combination sends a shiver across your arms. Not fear exactly, more like the sensation of something brushing past you that you can't see. You begin to realize this isn't just music. This is a test of presence. He's proving to the grove, and maybe to himself, that his sound is enough to change the air. And here's one of those unusual facts. In some old accounts, people believe that the sound of Apollo's lyre wasn't just for entertainment. It was healing. The vibrations were said to soothe fevers, ease grief, and even balance the soul like some cosmic tuning fork. So if you're lying in bed tonight feeling a little restless, maybe imagine those strings brushing over your nerves, ironing out the creases of the day. A breeze slides through, carrying a chill that makes you pull your cloak tighter. The grove exhales as if satisfied. Apollo's fingers still dance, but slower now, each pluck spaced farther apart like the ticking of a clock winding down. You start to lose track of time. Minutes, hours, it could be either. Music has that effect, stretching or compressing the measure of life until it's meaningless. Somewhere above, the first star appears, trembling faintly in the darkening sky. It feels early, like it showed up just to listen. And maybe it did. In this world, stars have ears, and gods have egos big enough to expect an audience of constellations. You lean back against a tree trunk, rough bark pressing into your shoulders, grounding you. The world narrows to sound and twilight, to a god who doesn't seem aware, or maybe doesn't care, that you're there at all. It's intimate without being personal, like listening through a wall to someone else's quiet secrets. A thought nudges at you. Maybe this is how everything begins. Not with thunder or fanfare, but with a simple experiment. A god bored in a grove, a lyre under his hands, and a ripple of curiosity spreading outward. Later, the world will remember contests, rivalries and consequences, but here, in this moment, it's just Apollo and the first glimmer of something larger. And as the last traces of daylight slip away, the grove falls even more silent, waiting, as though it knows that the next notes will not be played for the trees alone. The strings quiver again, quieter, and you feel the hush deepen. Something or someone is coming closer. The air hangs heavy around you, the last strand of Apollo's melody quivering into the dusk like a candle flame refusing to die. You tilt your head, waiting for silence to settle, but instead something peculiar happens. The sound doesn't stop. It wanders, it climbs, it snakes out of the grove and up the hillsides, as though the earth itself has become a hollow chamber, an amphitheater carved by gods long before humans thought of building one. You close your eyes and hear it bounce from ridge to ridge, each echo slightly altered, like a child repeating a word until it turns into nonsense. A goat answers with a bleat, almost in key, which earns a faint smirk from Apollo. You'd swear it's on purpose. He plucks another phrase, watching it chase itself up into the crags where shepherds are settling their flocks for the night. Imagine being one of them. You're tying up a fence, yawning, and suddenly a stray golden note drifts past your ear. You don't see where it comes from, but you pause, hand frozen in midair because something in your bones insists you listen. The hills carry the tune farther, drawing in listeners you can't see. Farmers packing away their tools glance up, brows furrowing. Children tug their mothers' sleeves, whispering, "Do you hear that?" The sound is both close and far, personal and infinite. You think of modern loudspeakers blaring at sports stadiums, the way the bass rattles your chest, even if you're in the cheap seats. Only here there's no machinery, no stadium, just hills that behave like natural sound engineers. If a Greek geologist existed at this moment, he'd be furiously scribbling about resonance phenomena, but instead everyone's just quietly enchanted. The temperature drops a little. The stone under your sandals cools, the warmth of the day sliding off like a cloak. A breeze carries the smell of pine sap from the higher ridges, sharper and less comforting than the time you breathed in earlier. It makes you think of campfires, though none are visible yet. Twilight deepens, shifting the palette of the grove into darker greens and bruised purples, while the sky tips from honey gold into deep indigo. Apollo seems aware of the spreading echoes. His fingers slow, then pause, then tease the strings again with a lazy pluck, as though testing how far the sound will go this time. The corner of his mouth twitches in amusement. He isn't just playing. He's experimenting with the geography itself, turning hills into accomplices. You realize suddenly this is less like practice and more like a sound check. A divine rehearsal. Imagine Apollo shrugging, saying, let's see how these acoustics work tonight. You hear faint voices in the distance, shepherds talking, their words broken and softened by the echoes. What is it, one says. Another answers, maybe Pan playing tricks. You can't catch all of it, but you hear laughter threaded with unease. Mortals are used to goats, wolves, storms, but not music drifting on the air with no visible source. And here's where history decides to slip in. The Battle of Marathon, yes, that one where the Athenians shocked everyone by defeating the mighty Persians in 490 BCE, wasn't just about swords and shields. Ancient writers loved to add embellishments, and some swore that sounds, mysterious shouts, and phantom cries echoed across the battlefield, terrifying the Persians and bolstering Greek courage. Was it Apollo? Was it Pan? Or was it simply the chaotic noise of war echoing in the hills? Historians still debate whether divine echoes were part of propaganda, or if people really believed the gods were DJing the fight from above. You open your eyes, startled by how easily echoes can reshape truth. Music tonight, war cries another day. Same hills, same illusions, just a different story told. Apollo hums again, this time louder, letting his voice blend with the lyre. The combination rolls outward, deeper and richer, like two instruments weaving together. Somewhere up the slope, a shepherd boy gasps. You imagine him whispering to his sheepdog. Did you hear that? The dog tilts its head, ears perked, as if to reply, Buddy, I have no idea what's going on, but please don't drag me into it. You chuckle softly at the thought. Even the animals must feel the pull of this music, though unlike humans, they don't bother to argue about divine origins. For them, sound is sound. Either it soothes or it startles. The echoes deepen, almost overlapping, creating the illusion of a chorus where there is only one god. You tilt your head again, catching fragments. One echo higher, another lower, like siblings trying to outdo each other. It feels alive. You realize with a tiny shiver that the landscape is playing back at him, making him both soloist and ensemble. Another fact nudges at you, one that doesn't make it into most textbooks. The Greeks believed that echoes weren't just sound bouncing around. They imagined echo as a nymph, cursed to repeat only what others said. Think about it. Somewhere out there in those darkening ridges, a shy nymph might actually be sitting cross-legged, dutifully mimicking Apollo's strings, her voice weaving with his like an unseen partner. It's unusual, sure, but it makes the night feel fuller, as if hidden presences are keeping him company. Apollo's fingers grow more playful, plucking a quick run of notes like water skipping over stones. The echoes chase after it, tumbling clumsily, almost tripping over each other. You can't help but grin. It's like watching a master throw breadcrumbs just to see how pigeons scatter. Too easy, you murmur under your breath, though the words vanish into the thickening dusk. Then comes a low rumble. Not thunder, at least not yet, but the faint vibration of hooves on soil. You stiffen, listening. Are riders approaching? No, too scattered. Goats again, maybe, shifting nervously on the slopes. Still, the timing makes your pulse quicken. Music traveling this far is bound to draw more than passive listeners. You imagine the hills themselves whispering to one another. Something's happening in the grove. Come closer. Don't miss it. The air thickens with anticipation, though nothing visibly changes. You sense a swell of attention. unseen eyes watching. The cicadas dare not resume. Even the goats have quieted. It feels like the world is holding its breath. Modern comparison. Think of when you're at a concert and the lights dim just before the main act comes on. Everyone goes silent, necks craned, waiting for the drop. Except here, no pyrotechnics, no fog machines, just a god playing to an audience of rocks, trees, and slowly gathering mortals. A pair of voices drifts from the hillside, closer this time. Is it Apollo? It has to be. Who else sounds like sunlight? You almost laugh. Sunlight as a sound, what a compliment. Imagine someone calling your karaoke rendition of Sweet Caroline a burst of daylight. The notes soften again, melting into something more intimate. You feel them brush against your skin like cool fabric, like silk caught in a breeze. A hush spreads. You notice your own breathing slowing, your heartbeat sinking with the tempo. This isn't coincidence, it's command. Apollo is bending not just the air but the rhythm of bodies, luring them into alignment. And for a moment you let it take you. You imagine lying back on the hillside grass, listening with the shepherds, the children, the goats. You'd think you were safe, wrapped in sound. Until a sly thought intrudes. Gods don't perform without purpose. Apollo is many things. Healer, prophet, archer. But above all, he's proud. That pride hums beneath the music like an undercurrent, waiting. A star winks above, brighter than before, and you feel it like an audience member leaning forward in the dark. The night isn't empty anymore. It's filling slowly with presence. You open your mouth as though to speak, but the sound dies in your throat. The echoes are too thick now, too layered, drowning out everything but themselves. And in their swirling pattern, you sense it clearly. Someone else is listening. Someone closer than the shepherds. The grove itself seems to brace for it, leaves trembling though the air is still. Apollo tilts his head slightly, as though he's aware too, waiting with a half smile. His fingers hover above the strings, ready to answer whoever dares step into his soundscape. And you, pressed against the tree, can't shake the feeling that the next voice to emerge from the echoes will not be human. You stay with the sound, your ears straining at that strange thickness that has settled into the grove. And in the pause between notes, you notice something different, an echo that doesn't quite behave. It is not the bouncing repeat of stone against canyon walls, not the teasing trick Apollo just played with the air. No, this one feels slower, heavier, almost as though someone has just stumbled into the music uninvited, their feet scuffing moss with the grace of a goat on roller skates. You glance toward the tree line where twilight has pooled into violet shadows, and out of that bruise of color, a figure appears. Hair wild, hooves clumsy, tail twitching like it's got a mind of its own. Marsyas the satyr emerges, head cocked to one side, like someone who just heard the neighbor's karaoke session and thought, I could totally do better. The air sharpens with the musky scent of goat and pine sap, layered together in a perfume no Olympian would bottle. You hear the crunch of acorns under his hooves, loud in the hush, and his breathing is rough, catching in his throat as though he sprinted here. His eyes gleaming yellow in the dim light, fixed not on you but on the lyre in Apollo's hands. It is as if every fiber of his being is drawn forward, like iron to a magnet. You almost want to whisper, careful friend. This isn't karaoke night at the village taverna. Marsyas rubs his arms, scratching at a patch of bristled fur, then takes one step closer. Apollo, of course, doesn't move. He just lets the lyre hum faintly, one lazy finger brushing the strings. The sound shivers through the trees like moth wings. It is an invitation and a warning rolled into one. Was that you playing? Marsyas asks at last, voice caught between awe and suspicion. His words hang awkwardly, as if he himself can't decide whether he wants to compliment or challenge. Apollo's smile curves, not warm, but not cruel either. You heard it, he replies simply. Yeah, Marsyas says, clearing his throat. It wasn't bad. That earns a chuckle from you, though you quickly smother it, because laughing too loudly here feels like clapping in a library. Marsyas doesn't notice. His gaze keeps darting back to the lyre, to Apollo's fingers, to the way the strings seem to glow faintly, even though no torchlight touches them. You notice details piling into your senses, the smell of damp bark, the sudden cold against your ankles where mist begins to seep, the faint chirp of a cricket, trying very hard to resume its normal routine despite the god in its territory. Your skin prickles. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see what this shaggy interloper will do. Marsyas, for his part, seems incapable of silence. I've been known to play a tune or two myself, he blurts, chest puffing up. Not like those stuffy hymns. I mean real music, feet stomping, wine spilling, laugh until you fall down kind of songs. He winks at you as though hoping for backup. You shake your head almost imperceptibly, because backing up a satyr against Apollo feels like joining the losing team at the Olympics. Yes, the real Olympics, the historical ones. You picture a poor athlete in 776 BCE, the very first recorded games, standing barefoot on a dusty track and realizing too late that he had skipped leg day for an entire year. That same sense of impending embarrassment hangs over Marsyas now. Apollo's voice floats like cool water. Do you believe you could do better? Marsyas kicks at the earth. Better? Well, maybe not better, but different. You don't know what people really like until you hear them cheer. You can't help but grin at the thought. Imagine dragging the gods onto something like America's Got Talent, forcing Apollo to stand in front of judges while a satyr strums reed pipes. One judge would hit the golden buzzer just for bravery. The conversation drifts into a rhythm. Apollo: what is music to you? Marsyas: noise that makes the heart leap. Apollo: and skill? Discipline. Marsyas: overrated. Anyone can learn. Not everyone can feel. The words rub against each other like flint. Sparks fly in your imagination. The satyr smells opportunity. The god smells arrogance. Meanwhile, the night folds deeper. The horizon has lost its last smear of pink. Stars prick through like spilled salt. The temperature drops, goosebumps rising along your arms. Somewhere far below in the valley, a dog barks once and then goes silent, as though sensing it has no business joining this duet. You recall that Marsyas is not just any rustic fiddler. He has a story, one you have brushed against in whispers before. How he will one day stumble upon a flute once played by Athena herself, cast aside because it puffed out her cheeks unbecomingly. That odd little fact, Athena, goddess of wisdom, tossing away an invention because of vanity, still makes you shake your head. Historians still debate whether this tale began as satire about pride or as a simple explanation for why flutes belong to rustic folk rather than Olympian shrines. Either way, Marsyas carries that rumor like a badge, though tonight it hasn't yet happened. Tonight he is only curious, only reckless. The satyr leans forward. Let me try. Apollo tilts his head, golden hair catching a sliver of starlight. Try what? Oh, your toy, Marsyas says, nodding at the lyre. His tone is half innocent, half provocative, like a child asking to hold a sword. A breeze passes, cold enough to sting your nose. Pine needles hiss against one another like conspirators whispering. You suddenly realize you are hungry. How long has it been since you last ate? The thought of bread, of olives, of roasted lamb intrudes absurdly, and you imagine Marsyas demanding snacks before a showdown. Music's better with wine, he might say, and maybe a cheese plate. Apollo does not yield the instrument. He only plays another chord, long and low, until it hums in your ribs. The sound feels alive, a creature curling against your chest. Marsyas's ears twitch, his whole body straining forward. You whisper to yourself, this won't end well, and yet you linger, because something in Marsyas's eagerness feels familiar, almost human. That itch to prove yourself, to step into the light and show that you too can shine. It is the same impulse that once made Julius Caesar stride across the Rubicon in 49 BCE, ignoring the Senate's warnings. History turns on those reckless steps forward, sometimes into glory, sometimes into ruin. The satyr scratches his chin. Suppose we make it a game, he suggests, sly now. You play, I play. Whoever wins. He doesn't finish, because even he realizes he hasn't worked out the stakes. Apollo smiles with his eyes closed, like someone who has already read the last page of the book and knows how it ends. And who decides the winner? Marsyas shrugs. The world. You shift uncomfortably. The world is a harsh judge. The world cheers gladiators in Rome, then forgets them by supper. The world builds amphitheaters, then lets weeds grow in the seats. To entrust one's pride to such an audience feels dangerous. And yet Apollo lets the idea hang. The night thickens, the air colder, the scent of smoke faint, as if villagers far off have kindled hearth fires. You wonder if anyone out there notices that a contest is brewing in the dark, one that will echo through centuries. A cricket chirps again, louder like a drum roll from nature's pit orchestra. Marsyas grins, teeth flashing. He doesn't see tragedy. He only sees possibility. You fold your arms, shiver against the chill, and lean into the shadows, because you know what comes next will not be gentle. And as Apollo plucks another shimmering note, brighter than the stars, you hear something shift inside Marcius, an eagerness hardening into challenge. The first contest is about to be born. You don't have to wait long. The silence stretches taut, the grove holding its breath as though every root and branch is leaning in. Marcius reaches behind his back and produces something slender, gleaming faintly even in the dim starlight. A flute, though not just any flute. Its surface bears the sheen of polished bone, smoothed by hands that were not his, a strange curve that almost seems alive. When he raises it, the scent of old reeds and breath-worn wood drifts toward you, a smell that mingles oddly with pine resin and the faint sweetness of crushed berries somewhere underfoot. Apollo watches with a calmness that borders on smug. He cradles his lyre, plucking one string with a casual finger, and the note lingers like a sunbeam caught in crystal. The contrast is absurd. One god with gold-threaded poise, one satyr with goat hair matted from wandering, about to duel with borrowed air. You think of modern talent shows again. This is the equivalent of someone walking on stage with a kazoo to challenge a world-class violinist. Bold, maybe foolish. Definitely entertaining. The first sound Marcius makes is a sharp puff. It squeaks unsteady, like a child learning to whistle. You almost bite your lip to stop a laugh. Even Apollo arches an eyebrow, his expression saying, "Really? That's your opener?" But then Marcius adjusts, tail twitching, and blows again. This time the note spills smooth and low, a tone that slides into the night air like dark honey poured slowly from a jar. It weaves between the trunks, nudging aside the mist. The stars above seem to tilt closer, curious. You hear the difference immediately. Apollo's lyre is light, crystalline, like beams of dawn slicing clouds. Marcius's flute is earthy, warm, an echo of shepherd songs carried across valleys. It doesn't glitter. It lingers, smoky, like the last embers of a fire you thought had died. Apollo answers with a cascade, fingers dancing across strings so swiftly you can almost see sparks. The sound is sharp, clean, disciplined. You imagine marching formations, phalanxes moving in perfect time, like the famous Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE, when Greek soldiers held formation so tightly they stunned the Persians. That same sense of precision radiates from Apollo's notes. Marcius, unfazed, closes his eyes and lets the flute sway with his breathing. His tune swells into something round and swaying, like villagers at a festival after one too many cups of wine. You smell smoke from imagined torches, taste the memory of roasted figs on your tongue. His music is not polished, but it carries bodies with it. It makes you want to tap your foot, to sway. "Not bad," you whisper under your breath, though no one hears. Apollo chuckles, plucking in response, every note a rebuke. His melody runs like silver, too smooth to catch, too perfect to resist. Marcius, however, shoots you a glance as though looking for approval. You give a tiny shrug, like a reluctant judge on the voice who isn't ready to spin their chair yet. The dialogue sparks again, woven into the music. Apollo. Technique wins, Marcius. Heart wins, Apollo. Perfection is divine, Marcius. Imperfection is alive. The grove hums with their debate. You catch more sensory flashes, wind brushing against your ears, cool dampness crawling higher up your legs, the sweet tang of sap where you grip the bark of the tree. Somewhere nearby an owl hoots once, then falls silent, as if it too wants to listen. Marcius leans into the performance, and suddenly, unbelievably, the flute takes on a life of its own. The sound bends, warps, doubling back like two voices woven together. For a moment you're sure you hear Athena's breath still trapped in it, that unusual fact lingering in myth. The goddess once discarded this very instrument because it puffed out her cheeks ungracefully. Imagine quitting an Olympic event because the camera angle wasn't flattering. And yet here is Marcius, turning vanity's reject into raw power. Apollo's eyes narrow. He feels it too, that mortal instruments, when twisted by hunger and defiance, can sometimes rise higher than expected. Historians still debate whether these myths were cautionary tales about hubris or subtle reminders that art cannot be owned by gods alone. The air grows colder as their duel intensifies. You wrap your arms around yourself, hearing your own heartbeat loud in your chest. Apollo's notes rise sharper, slicing like icicles. Marsyas counters with rolling waves of flute, warm as bread fresh from an oven. The clash is surreal, ice against fire, dawn against dusk, and you can't help but laugh quietly when a ridiculous thought crosses your mind. This whole scene is basically the ancient Greek version of a rap battle. One god dropping perfect rhymes, one satyr bringing raw street energy. All that's missing is a hype man shouting, "Opa!" from the sidelines. Marsyas stomps his hoof for rhythm, dust rising from the forest floor. Apollo stays still, his only movement the flick of fingers across strings. The silence between notes becomes as important as the notes themselves. Even your breathing feels like it might throw off the balance. Then something curious happens. You find yourself swaying unconsciously toward the satyr's side. His flute fills the empty spaces inside you that Apollo's precision can't quite reach. You picture villagers gathering in a circle, clapping, stomping, spilling wine. You hear echoes of human life, messy, joyful, flawed. And you realize why Marsyas dares to challenge. It isn't about skill, it's about connection. Apollo notices, of course. He notices everything. His golden eyes flicker with something colder, sharper. You can almost hear the unspoken line. This was never meant to be fair. The duel rolls on, stretching into something larger than the night itself. If music could paint, you'd see two murals unfurling at once. Apollo's of shining palaces and sunlit marble, Marsyas's of rough-hewn villages, and laughter echoing in caves. Both beautiful, both true. The temperature drops further, mist thickening until your toes are damp. You smell earthworms disturbed beneath the soil. That sharp mineral tang of stone sweating under night air. The stars blur behind a creeping veil of cloud. Every sense of yours is soaked in the tension. And just when you think they might actually balance each other, Apollo shifts. He plays upside down. Strings inverted, notes twisted, an acrobat's move designed not to delight but to crush. Marsyas falters, lips slipping on the flute because how does one match that? It's like someone inventing slam dunks during the middle of a casual pickup game. The air stills. You hear Marsyas gasp faintly, the flute lowering a fraction. His tail flicks nervously. For the first time, doubt creeps across his face, and you, pressed against the bark, feel the shift too. The contest has tilted. You almost want to step forward to protest, "Hey, foul play," but your voice sticks in your throat. The gods don't need referees. The grove holds its silence. The echo of Apollo's inverted tune still rattles through your bones. Marsyas swallows, adjusting his grip, refusing to quit. But you already sense it. This duel is heading towards something harsher than applause. The night is not done with you yet. At first you think it's only you, the bark at your back, the mist curling at your ankles, and the duel carving itself into the night. But then you notice shapes, half seen at the edge of the clearing, figures slipping in between shadows like moths drawn to a lantern. A goat bleats from somewhere farther down the hill, answered by a nervous laugh you're fairly sure belongs to a shepherd, who doesn't want to admit he followed the sound here. The music, it turns out, has been bait. Apollo and Marsyas aren't just battling each other, they're pulling in an audience. The air thickens with bodies, breath, and whispers. You catch the scratch of sandals on rock, the faint odor of sweat mingled with herbs from people who clearly left their dinners unfinished to see what the racket was about. One woman still clutches a half-peeled onion, its sharp scent mixing strangely with the pine around you. Kids too, barefoot, dirt-smudged, their eyes glowing in reflected starlight, gather at the front as though this was some kind of ancient amphitheater. And maybe it is. The Greeks loved a spectacle. You picture a Broadway opening night, but with goats parked in the front row, the duel itself hasn't paused. Apollo lets his strings sing, each note glimmering cold as frost, while Marsyas blows his flute with a kind of desperation that feels warmer the more the crowd leans in. The contrast only sharpens now that people are reacting. Every ripple of applause, or goat bleat that passes for it, seems to embolden the satyr. Apollo, for his part, smirks, because applause means nothing when you're literally the god of music. Two men nearby begin whispering like they're sports commentators. Did you hear that inversion? He flipped the lyre upside down. Yeah, but the satyr, he's got spirit. You can't measure spirit, it's absurd, but the murmured play-by-play adds a pulse to the night. You almost expect someone to break out a betting board, chalking odds against a tree. And then you notice the animals. Not just goats, but a pair of oxen that should have been tied down, noses damp, eyes reflecting moonlight like mirrors. A dog slinks forward and then sits on its haunches, ears perked as though waiting for a verdict. It's not Disney magic. It's stranger. The music itself seems to demand witnesses, calling them across distance. You inhale deeply, tasting smoke and the faint brine of the sea carried on the night wind. It's easy to forget how close Greece always is to salt water until the air reminds you. The breeze cools your skin, raising goosebumps. For a second you think of another gathering, Woodstock 1969. Thousands of mortals huddled in mud, pulled together by sound. The scale is different, but the principle is identical. Humans never changed. Give them a tune and they'll come barefoot through the dark to hear it. Marsyas, sensing the swell of attention, stamps his hoof, and the crowd stomps with him. Dust rises in the torchless night, carrying the musky smell of disturbed earth. Apollo ignores it, plucking faster, the metallic tang of strings vibrating so sharp you swear you feel them in your teeth. Someone behind you whispers, "This is better than the Olympic Games," which, considering the first Olympic festival back in 776 BCE had actual naked runners and discus throwers, is saying something. At least here no one risks a pulled hamstring, and yet danger hums. You feel it beneath the applause, beneath the tapping feet. This isn't a friendly showcase. This is a battle. And battles, as history proves, rarely end with handshakes. Think of Julius Caesar's assassination. What began as senators gathering for politics ended in a storm of knives. Crowds can bear witness, but they can't guarantee mercy. Marsyas throws you another glance, sweat slicking the edges of his goat brow. It's the look of a performer begging for validation. You can almost hear him whisper without speaking, "Are they with me?" And you don't answer, though your chest tightens. Apollo finally speaks aloud, voice smooth as olive oil poured into a shallow dish. "You see, even mortals know perfection when they hear it." Marsyas lowers his flute just long enough to bark back, "Perfection bores." Life dances to mistakes. The crowd murmurs approval, a few claps breaking out. You grin despite yourself. It feels like a stand-up set in progress. Marsyas throwing one-liners, Apollo the haughty straight man. Then something unexpected. A nymph drifts forward, her skin glimmering faint like dew. She places a hand on the trunk nearest Apollo and listens as though the tree itself hums. The rumor of echo again. You can't tell, but her presence adds a shimmer to the night, a reminder that this isn't just rustic fun. The divine always watches when boundaries are tested. You notice more details now that the clearing is crowded. The warmth of bodies raising the air temperature, the itchy brush of someone's wool cloak brushing against your elbow, the faint metallic tang of bronze jewelry catching star glow. The night is alive with layers. A boy shouts, "Play faster," and Marsyas obliges, his flute trilling wild like sparrows scattering from a field. Apollo, unamused, responds with chords that ring solid as stone. It's almost comic. You imagine modern YouTube comments scrolling across the scene, "Team Lyre," "Team Flute," "Whose side are you on?" And in that thought is another truth. What you're watching is not just a contest, but the invention of the audience. Before this night, maybe music had been private, divine, or simple pastime. Now it is communal, judged by ears, hearts, and stomping feet. The first concert crowd, messy and enthralled, is being born around you. You can't help but laugh quietly again. "So this is how it begins," you murmur. The man clutching the onion looks at you as though you've just insulted his dinner. As the duel surges, a hush falls, sudden and eerie. Even the goats freeze, their bells stilled. The moon has climbed higher, draping everything in pale silver. You shiver, aware that the night is pushing towards some turning point. You know from every story, every history, that crowds like this don't just gather for the joy of it. They gather because something irreversible is about to happen. And in the breath before Apollo plays again, you can't shake the thought. Soon, these witnesses will have more to remember than music. You feel the hush deepen, as though the night itself leans closer to listen. Apollo tilts his head back, golden hair gleaming in the moonlight like he's standing in his own personal spotlight. Seriously, it's the kind of glow you'd pay a fortune for in modern skincare commercials. The lyre rests easily in his hands, strings shimmering faintly, as if they've already decided the contest is over before the next note is even played. A faint breeze rustles the pines, carrying with it the layered smells of sweat, goat musk, and roasted chickpeas from someone's forgotten pouch. The temperature drops a notch. a shiver rolling up your arms, though the light radiating from Apollo's presence almost balances it out, like a celestial space heater with attitude. Around you, sandals scrape rock as the crowd shifts in anticipation. Peasants, nymphs, even a stray ox, all caught in the web of a performance that feels less like music and more like domination. Shall we? Apollo's voice drips calm arrogance, like a professor who assigns 3 books over the weekend just to prove he can. Marsyas clutches his flute tighter, his chest heaving. Play then. Let the grove decide. His voice cracks slightly, betraying nerves beneath bravado. The lyre's first note spills into the air, pure, clear, almost surgical in its perfection. You feel it hum in your chest, vibrating like the intro to a movie where you just know the hero isn't going to lose. The crowd murmurs, a wave of sighs and gasps. A shepherd beside you whispers, "By the gods," then quickly bites into his onion for comfort, the crunch startlingly loud in the stillness. Apollo's melody rises higher, weaving threads of sound like golden embroidery. Each pluck is deliberate, polished, shimmering. It reminds you of an Olympic gymnast sticking every landing without even a wobble, while Marsyas looks like the scrappy street dancer who's suddenly realizing the floor is way slipperier than expected. And yet, as Apollo plays, a faint unease tugs at you. The god's music is flawless, yes, but also sharp-edged, like sunlight that blinds rather than warms. It feels less like joy, more like a performance designed to humiliate. You can almost hear the satyr muttering under his breath, "He plays to crush, not to sing." The crowd leans toward Apollo now. Even the goats stop chewing, ears angled to the sound. Someone in the back mutters, "This is the birth of greatness," and you realize you're witnessing not just a contest, but propaganda in the making. This could be replayed in centuries of myths, sculpted onto vases, retold in amphitheaters, polished until only Apollo shines. A ripple of history brushes your thoughts. You're reminded of Julius Caesar's triumphal parades through Rome, where victory wasn't just celebrated, it was staged to look inevitable. And here Apollo is staging the same inevitability. Not a duel, but a coronation. The melody shifts. Apollo now strums while singing softly, his voice warm and commanding, though you notice he somehow keeps playing while leaning backward, almost reclining, like a smug influencer who knows the algorithm loves him. Is that fair? Marsyas blurts, hooves stomping. We agreed, music alone. Apollo raises a golden brow. Singing is music. Would you deny the muses their voices? His tone is silk-wrapped steel. The satyr sputters and laughter ripples through the crowd. You wince at the imbalance. This is no longer about talent, but pride. The air thickens. The moon seems brighter, almost spotlighting Apollo while shadows deepen around Marsyas. The smell of pine grows sharper, needles prickling the ground as if even the forest recoils. You hug yourself against the sudden chill. Your turn, Apollo says, reclining like he's got eternity to spare. Marsyas raises the flute, blows, and at first you think, yes, he might catch this. His notes tumble wild, earthy, alive like rivers crashing from mountains. The crowd stomps again, hands clapping. Even you feel your body want to sway, to dance. But then you notice Apollo's gaze, flat, golden, unyielding, and Marsyas falters, a squeak escaping the reed. The silence that follows feels heavier than stone. A child in the crowd whispers, "Did he fail?" And the words hang like a verdict. You realize Apollo has turned the grove into a courtroom, the audience into jurors. Pride gleams in his eyes, brighter than the strings of his lyre. You can smell it in the air, sharp, metallic, almost like lightning before it strikes. Is this what you call contest? Marsyas whispers, his voice swallowed by the hush. Apollo leans forward, voice velvet but cutting. This is what mortals call overreach. The phrase stings, and the crowd shifts uneasily. A nymph covers her mouth, as if tasting tragedy on her tongue. Historians still debate whether Apollo truly tricked Marsyas by adding his voice, or whether the satyr simply faltered from pride. But standing here, you feel the truth is heavier than both. Apollo needed to win, not for the music, but for his pride. And pride, in gods as in men, rarely ends kindly. The grove seems to sigh, branches creaking, as if the trees themselves regret what they've seen. Somewhere at the edge of the crowd you notice a flicker, a shadow moving. Perhaps Hermes, perhaps just your imagination. But it carries a promise that the contest is over, But the punishment has yet to begin, and as Apollo rises, golden, victorious, you feel the temperature drop once more, warning you that the glow of triumph often casts the darkest shadows. You stand in the clearing, and for a long moment the silence feels heavier than any sound that's come before. Apollo glows at the center, his lyre still humming faintly with the residue of perfection, but your eyes shift to Marsyas. The satyr holds his flute as though it has betrayed him, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. His wild curls are damp with sweat, and the chill night air turns the moisture cold, making him shiver. Around you the crowd waits, not cheering, not jeering, just waiting, as though they know the god has already claimed the crown, but the satyr still has something left to offer. You hear the faintest exhale, a sigh more than a song, but Marsyas lifts the flute again. The reed trembles against his lips. He does not blast notes like before, no stomping, no challenge. Instead, he lets out a thread of sound so soft that it feels almost private, as though you've stumbled upon a lullaby meant for a sleeping child. The tone is fragile, breathy, imperfect, yet it draws you in. It smells of damp soil and crushed leaves, of wine spilled on tavern floors, of humanity in its most unguarded form. Compared to Apollo's crystalline brilliance, it is humble, almost embarrassed to exist. And yet you find yourself leaning forward, ears pricked, heart strangely caught. A shepherd near you wipes his eyes. It's like home, he whispers. Home. Another scoffs softly, but there's no mockery in it. More like he's afraid to admit he feels the same. Marsyas plays on, each note as faint as the flutter of moth wings against firelight. You think of soldiers in the aftermath of battles, huddled around small fires, humming to remind themselves they're still alive. You think of mothers rocking children through sickness, singing through cracked throats. It is not art polished for Olympian halls. It is the sound of survival, of people who make do. The audience stills. Even the goats stop shifting. A hush spreads that feels almost reverent. For the first time tonight, Apollo is not the center of gravity. The satyr's humble breath carries more weight than golden pride. You hear a whisper at your shoulder, though no one stands there. Remember this, the music drifts, barely there like steam off a cooling cup of tea. And though it wavers, you sense its truth. Imperfect breath is still breath, and it carries life. Apollo, however, does not smile. His golden brows tighten. He leans forward slightly, as though he cannot believe that such ragged sound dares to hold attention. Is this performance, he says, voice edged with disdain, or pity? Marsyas lowers the flute, meeting the god's eyes. His voice is low but steady. It is breath, Apollo. And without breath, no string, no voice, no song can exist. That line lingers in the grove, settling like dew on the pine needles. You feel goosebumps crawl up your arms. The crowd shifts uneasily, caught between awe and fear. Because in a way, Marsyas has spoken truth to power, and power rarely tolerates that. You recall, almost without meaning to, another moment from history. When a lone monk named Martin Luther nailed his theses to a church door, his humble act of protest sparking waves no one could stop. This feels the same, small breath, enormous consequence, and yet you also remember a lesser-known fact. In Phrygia, Marsyas's homeland, people once hung flutes on trees as offerings, believing the instruments absorbed the soul of the player. That thought chills you, because if Marsyas's soul is in his flute, and Apollo means to break him, then more than wood and reed is at stake. The night air grows colder. The mist thickens, coiling around ankles like smoke. You shiver, wishing for a cloak, but there is none. The scent of pine has sharpened into something bitter, like sap burnt black. Apollo rises, tall, radiant, his lyre glowing faintly gold. You admit defeat, he declares, though Marsyas has not said so. I admit breath, the satyr answers. Almost smiling, somewhere in the back, a woman's laugh bursts suddenly, then dies, strangled by fear. The crowd knows this is dangerous ground. You hear another small dialogue carried through the hush. Will he spare him? Spare him? He's a god. The words taste of inevitability. Historians still debate whether Marsyas intended this last tune as surrender, or whether he believed in some fragile corner of his heart that humility could sway a god's pride. But standing here, listening to the echo of his final breath song, you feel the question doesn't matter. What matters is that he dared to play at all. You notice Hermes again, perhaps real, perhaps imagined, standing at the edge, lips pressed. eyes shadowed. If it is him, he does not interfere. Guards rarely stop guards. The breeze lifts. Marcias lowers the flute at last, hands trembling but not hiding. The grove holds still, balanced on the knife edge between music and aftermath. You sense what's coming. The night tastes of iron, bitter and metallic. The pine shadows stretch longer, as though preparing to cover what the moon should not see. And as Marcius breathes one final time, shoulders rising and falling, you realize his breath carries something more lasting than Apollo's polished pride. It carries defiance in its gentlest form, like a candle that insists on burning though the storm is near. The crowd doesn't cheer. They don't clap. They just watch as you do, hearts caught between admiration and dread. The grove seems to lean in, whispering its own truth. This story is about to turn from music to something far darker, and none of you, not even the satyr, can stop it. The grove holds its breath after Marcias's last trembling notes. You can almost hear the air trying to settle, like the silence after a dropped glass when everyone waits to see if it shattered. Apollo stands proud, still glowing faintly gold, his fingers brushing the lyre as though it were proof of his divinity. Marcias lowers his flute, shoulders heaving, curls damp with sweat, and his eyes searching not for victory but for acknowledgement. That's when you hear it, the smallest murmur from the edge of the crowd where shadows are softer and bodies more delicate. The nymphs have begun to whisper. Their voices aren't loud, but they slip through the mist like threads of silk. You catch phrases in fragments. He played with heart. The god was cruel. The breath was truer than the string. Their words feel like ripples spreading through still water. The smell of damp earth deepens. You can almost taste it, like biting into raw roots. The cool air brushes against your cheeks, carrying the faint perfume of crushed flowers, a scent at odds with the tightening dread in your chest. Did you hear? One nymph leans close to another, her hair a silver cascade that almost blends with moonlight. He made even the goats quiet, another replies with a shrug that hides trembling. And what is quiet worth to a god? The exchange hits you like overhearing co-workers gossiping about the boss at the office water cooler. Dangerous, irresistible, and probably going to end badly. You can't help but lean in, though you know you shouldn't. The crowd feels it too. A shepherd rubs his hands together, not from cold but nerves, and a boy clutches his onion like a talisman. A goat sneezes loudly, breaking the tension for half a second, like someone's phone going off in the middle of a serious lecture, and a ripple of nervous chuckles follows. Apollo's golden eyes sweep across the gathering. He doesn't miss the whispers. He never misses anything. Do you doubt? His voice cuts through the night, smooth as polished marble and twice as cold. The nymphs freeze. Their whispers are swallowed instantly, but the damage is done. You can still feel the words lingering in the air, like the smell of smoke long after the fire is out. You shift your weight, bark scratching your back, and you think of another moment from history, when Julius Caesar stood before the Roman Senate, refusing to see the daggers hidden in their robes. That same uneasy air hovers here, the kind where admiration is laced with danger, and one wrong word could cost everything. The nymphs try to hide it, but they cannot stop the way their bodies lean toward Marcias. He is flawed, mortal, trembling, but he is also alive in a way the god's perfection is not. That contrast hangs between them like heat between lightning and thunder. A lesser-known fact drifts to you. In some tellings, it was nymphs who first taught humans to dance, their laughter stamping rhythms into the ground. Maybe that's why they feel drawn to Marcias's humble song. It is closer to their own origins than Apollo's gilded notes ever were. Another whisper tickles your ear, though you're not sure if it's meant for you. Perfection is cold. Breath is warm. Historians still debate whether these whispers were ever truly spoken, or whether later storytellers imagined them to give Marcias sympathy he never had. But here in the chill of this grove, you hear them as if they were undeniable truth. The air grows heavier, mist thickening until you can see it coiling like smoke around ankles and tree trunks. The moon's light scatters in it, turning silver into something ghostly. The night smells sharper now, pine resin almost biting in your nostrils. You hug your arms around yourself, shivering as the temperature dips. You overhear another short exchange, two satyrs at the back, speaking low. He'll punish him. Punish? He'll erase him. The bluntness makes your stomach turn. You think of modern sports fans when their team loses, muttering about how the ref destroyed them. Only here the stakes aren't a scoreboard, they're flesh and soul. Marsyas raises his flute again, just a gesture, not to play. His hands shake, but he doesn't hide them. His voice comes faint. I gave what I had. One of the nymphs answers without thinking, her voice carrying farther than she meant, and it was enough. A gasp spreads like wildfire. You can almost hear hearts pounding, like drums beneath the quiet. The goddess of night herself seems to lean closer, shadows deepening at the grove's edge. Apollo's jaw tightens, his pride flashing brighter than his glow. "Enough?" he repeats, and the single word sounds like a trial sentence. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. You smell fear now, sour, acrid, cutting through the softer scents of earth and blossom. Your own throat feels tight, as though you've swallowed cold smoke, and yet beneath the dread you feel something else. A subtle resistance blooming. It's in the way the nymphs stand a little closer together, the way shepherds glance toward Marsyas rather than Apollo, the way silence itself refuses to bend into applause for the god. You remember, suddenly a strange historical echo. During the American Revolution, when ragged militias stood against the greatest army of their age, their weakness somehow became their strength. They didn't win by matching perfection. They won by enduring, by breathing through each clash until breath became defiance. Here too, Marsyas's humble breath lingers. And the nymphs, with their whispers, fan it into something bigger than one satyr's song. You feel the story tilting. Not away from doom, no, that's still coming, but towards something larger, something that will echo long after Apollo's pride fades. The whispers are like seeds, and seeds never stay buried forever. The mist curls higher, wrapping the trees, muffling sound. You shiver again, not only from cold but from the certainty that the nymph's whispers are not the end. They are the beginning of memory. And as Apollo's eyes narrow, as Marsyas breathes steady despite the chill, you sense that the forest itself will soon be forced to choose which sound to keep, golden pride or humble breath. The twilight presses down on the grove like a heavy curtain, the mist now carrying a damp chill that slides under your skin. You notice the moon has lifted higher, its pale light catching on Apollo's golden crown so sharply that it's like watching someone deliberately angle their phone flashlight into your eyes just to remind you who's in charge. The air smells of crushed pine needles, resin clinging bitterly to the back of your throat, while the earth underfoot stays cold and damp, seeping through your sandals with the persistence of an unwanted notification you can't swipe away. Somewhere in the shadows, a goat coughs again, though softer this time, as though even the animals feel the weight of what's about to unfold. You watch Apollo's shoulders shift with an almost casual arrogance, his robe gleaming as though stitched from sunlight itself. The crowd lingers in that nervous hush, satyrs rubbing their arms as if the cold has suddenly worsened, shepherds avoiding eye contact the way co-workers dodge when someone asks for volunteers in a meeting. Even the nymphs, usually fountains of chatter, whisper only in quick, fragile bursts. Their words hover just at the edge of hearing, like the hiss of water about to boil, and you lean closer, half expecting one of them to turn to you and say, "We never agreed to this ending." Apollo's voice cuts in, cool and precise. "Do you doubt?" It isn't shouted, just floated across the grove like a silver thread, yet it tightens around everyone's throats. A satyr shuffles and mutters, "No, Lord," before realizing he's spoken too loudly. The god's gaze fixes on him for a moment, golden and sharp, and the poor satyr swallows audibly, louder than a dropped pin in a silent classroom. You almost want to whisper, "Buddy, wrong place, wrong time." Still the doubt remains, sliding between the trees like smoke. The nymph nearest you says quietly, "Marsyas's breath was honest." Her companion shakes her head, glancing nervously at Apollo's back. Honesty isn't safe. The words hang in the cool air, and you realize you're listening to the first sparks of resistance, tiny yet unquenchable, much like how gossip during the French Revolution spread faster than the authorities could squash it. That historical echo makes you wonder. Every time power crushes dissent, doesn't the whisper grow louder in memory? Historians still debate whether whispers or weapons change the world more. The tension pulls tighter when Apollo plucks a casual note on his lyre, as if testing whether the air will still obey him. The sound is bright, almost too bright, piercing the night like a neon sign buzzing over a dark alley. Some in the crowd flinch, others straighten, as though forced into alignment. You catch yourself thinking this is less about music now and more about influence. The kind of influencer stunt where the followers nod not because they love the content, but because they're afraid of losing access. You shift your weight, feeling pebbles press hard into your soul, grounding you in the damp soil of this grove that now feels more like a tribunal chamber than a festival. The cold intensifies as the mist thickens, wrapping around your ankles like a damp scarf you didn't ask for. Somewhere a nightbird calls sharp and short, like punctuation at the wrong part of a sentence. Marcias stands silent, his flute lowered, his breath still lingering in memory though no sound remains. His eyes, dark and glistening, meet those of the crowd. Not with defiance, but with something softer, more enduring, like the warmth of a fading fire that refuses to go out completely. You sense the people's hearts leaning toward him, not loudly, not openly, but in subtle shifts. A hand tightening on a staff, a nymph's lip trembling, a shepherd's foot scuffing the soil. It's the same kind of small gestures you'd see in a meeting, when everyone knows the boss is wrong but nobody dares to speak, until maybe, just maybe, someone does. Perhaps one nymph murmurs to another, "The god wins the prize." But Marcias wins the heart. The words ripple, carried further than intended, and a few heads lift in agreement. Apollo turns sharply, eyes narrowing as if the grove itself betrayed him. His robe flares slightly, catching moonlight like a blade. You feel the temperature drop again, an invisible frost laid over every face, and then Apollo laughs. It's soft at first, but it rings with the same polished sharpness as his music, a laugh designed not to share joy, but to reassert control. He says, "You admire breath over craft, weakness over divine design." His tone is velvet-wrapped steel, and it makes your spine tighten as though you've been called out personally for liking the wrong playlist. Marcias lifts his chin. His voice, when it comes, is quiet yet steady. "I offered what was mine." The words drift into the silence, heavy as stone. You notice his chest rising and falling, breath visible in the cooling air, fragile yet stubbornly present. Apollo's jaw tenses. For a fleeting moment, you wonder if the god envies that stubborn humility more than he despises it. The crowd holds its breath, as though waiting for the earth itself to choose sides. Mist curls thicker, carrying the tang of wet bark and faint goat musk, a smell oddly grounding amidst the divine tension. You feel goosebumps rise along your arms, not entirely from cold, but from the sense that something irreversible is about to occur. One shepherd mutters, too softly but still heard, "The breath felt truer." His neighbor elbows him, eyes wide in warning. You want to whisper, "Careful, this is how revolutions start." Tiny, muttered truths. It reminds you of the Boston Tea Party, where whispers in taverns and muttered complaints about unfair taxes snowballed into a world-shaking rebellion. Here, though, no crates of tea, just breath against lyre, mortal against God. The tension builds like a storm cloud, so even the trees seem to lean inward, their branches whispering with the wind, leaves rustling in a language you almost understand. The nymphs gather closer, their whispers a fragile braid of defiance, while Apollo's glow seems to brighten in direct opposition, daring them to speak louder. A satyr near you scratches his head and mutters to his friend, "Feels like we're in trouble just for being here." His friend snorts softly. "Welcome to history, pal." You almost laugh, except the tightness in your chest won't quite let you. The twilight deepens, the grove caught between fading night and the first hint of dawn. You feel the air hold still, as though even time hesitates to move forward. Apollo's eyes scan the crowd, golden and unyielding, yet behind them flickers something uneasy, a recognition, perhaps. That perfection alone doesn't bind hearts. The whispers continue, weaving through the twilight, binding the memory of Marcias's breath to everyone present. You feel it yourself, tucked deep inside, impossible to shake. And though Apollo still stands in victory, you sense the true weight tilting elsewhere, toward the mortal's fragile, honest song that refuses to vanish. As the last goat coughs and the mist thickens into something almost solid, you realize the twilight isn't just about fading light. It's the threshold before the punishment begins, and the tension tonight will carry into a darker dawn. The silence after music is never really silent. You stand in that grove, the twilight now deepening into a heavy indigo, and every sound presses louder against your ears precisely because the notes have stopped. A cricket scratches somewhere near your ankle, with all the subtlety of a leaky faucet. The mist curls tighter, a clammy ribbon wrapping your calves, cool and damp like an uninvited handshake. Pine resin sharpens the air, sticky in your nose, while a faint sweetness, roasted chickpeas or maybe figs hidden in a shepherd's pouch, flickers past on the breeze. It's as though the whole world has decided to take one long inhale and hold it. Apollo remains perfectly poised, one hand lingering on his lyre, fingers curved but still. You'd swear the god is savoring the silence, like a chef waiting for everyone to taste the soup. Across from him, Marsyas stands with flute lowered, his breath the only thing moving in the stillness. You see his chest rise and fall, fogging the cool air, a simple reminder that mortality keeps time differently than divine arrogance. The crowd waits, nymphs with their lips pressed shut, shepherds shifting like bored students in detention, souters scratching at their furry legs as though they'd rather be anywhere else but also can't look away. A goat sneezes again, because of course it does, and this time the sound ricochets into awkward laughter from a pair of boys at the back. Their laughter dies instantly when Apollo turns his head, golden gaze pinning them as effectively as any teacher catching you texting in class. One mutters, "Sorry," under his breath, though you doubt the god is in a forgiving mood. It is a pause stretched thin, like the moment between thunder and lightning, or if you prefer modern disasters, the lag when your internet freezes on the most unflattering video frame of your face. Everyone knows what's coming, but the waiting feels worse. Do you hear it? Whispers one nymph beside you. Her voice is low, soft as silk sliding across wood. Hear what? Another asks, eyes darting nervously. The silence, she answers. How it's heavier than song, and she's right. You can feel the air pressing down, weighted by expectation, almost as though the grove itself refuses to exhale. This is the strange rhythm of history. Great decisions often arrive not in the clash of cymbals, but in the pause before them. Think of the Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days of waiting while the world held its breath, uncertain if dawn would arrive under sunlight or mushroom clouds. And here in this grove, though the scale feels smaller, the sense of waiting carries the same brittle edges. Marsyas's eyes sweep the crowd. You catch the flicker of sadness there, but also something stubborn. He seems to know he's lost in Apollo's game, yet his breath lingers inside every person watching, like the warmth of bread still steaming after being pulled from the oven. Apollo knows it too. You can see it in the sharp angle of his jaw, the way his perfect composure tightens just slightly, like a mask shifting under heat. The god finally speaks, voice soft but slicing through the grove. A contest ends when the weaker yields. His words float, precise, a sound more dangerous than thunder. Marsyas answers simply, I yielded with breath. His voice is rough, mortal, edged with exhaustion, yet it carries better than Apollo's polished tone. You realize why? Truth doesn't need to be loud to echo. The crowd stirs uneasily. One shepherd mutters to another. Feels like the god still argues with himself. Shh, his companion hisses, eyes flicking to Apollo. But the mutter plants a seed, the way one casual tweet can trigger an avalanche of replies nobody expected. The mist deepens, damp against your skin, and the night feels thicker, as if the trees themselves are waiting. The smell of moss rises from the earth, cool and ancient, while a faint breeze rustles the branches above, whispering like someone flipping pages in a book too quickly to read. You wonder, briefly, if even the gods dislike pauses. After all, Apollo thrives on control, on music, performance, precision. Yet this stillness belongs to Marsyas, carved out of breath and humility. It's almost funny. The satyr's silence says more than Apollo's golden strings. Like when your co-worker says nothing in a meeting, but their raised eyebrow communicates the entire group's skepticism. Apollo tightens his grip on the lyre. His knuckles glow faintly, veins traced in sunlight. He begins to pluck a single note, a high, delicate string that floats like spun glass through the night. It's beautiful, flawless, but also brittle. The note hangs too long, a little like someone who keeps repeating their best joke because they're not sure you laughed the first time. A nymph leans close to whisper. Perfection grows heavy when repeated. Her words ripple like a secret no one dares to claim aloud. Somewhere in the crowd, a satyr murmurs, Marsyas played for us. Not against us, another replies. Then why do I feel like the loser? The silence bends around these exchanges, more powerful than Apollo's glittering note. You realize this pause is no accident. It's the space where memory plants itself, the gap that ensures people will recall not the perfection, but the fragility of breath. Historians still debate whether moments like these, quiet, fragile pauses, carry more influence than decisive victories. The air cools further. You rub your arms for warmth, your fingertips brushing damp fabric that smells faintly of smoke from shepherd's fires. The ground is uneven beneath you, a reminder of how raw and untamed this place is. No marble temples, no golden thrones, just soil and breath. Do you still doubt? Apollo asks again, his words silk-edged iron. This time no one answers. But silence is its own answer, isn't it? The god's smile is thin, dangerous. He senses the hesitation, the whispers, the seeds. His pride flares brighter, determined to stamp them out. Yet the pause stretches. The space between notes where resistance grows, you know, though you can't say how, that this pause will not last forever. Something darker waits on the other side, as inevitable as dawn. And when it arrives, it will crash through this silence like thunder breaking after unbearable stillness. For now, though you stand in the hush, the mist at your ankles, the cold air on your cheeks, listening to the heaviest sound of all, the pause between notes. You hear it before you see it, a crisp, crystalline strum that cuts straight through the mist, like a phone notification you absolutely didn't want during a meditation session. Apollo's fingers twitch across his lyre, and suddenly the grove is no longer a hushed chamber of suspense, but a stage, his stage, lit by a glow that feels both holy and obnoxiously smug. The nymphs flinch as if the air itself has sharpened, like when you peel foil off a new yogurt cup and it screeches against your nails. The strings hum with a brightness that doesn't sound natural at all. You're not hearing wood and gut. You're hearing sunlight pressed into sound waves, sharpened until they sting. It's blinding, as though the music itself is trying to bleach your retinas. You squint. Even the goat, yes, the same goat, freezes mid-chew, eyes glassy as if hypnotized by a supermarket freezer light. Apollo leans into the silence that Marsyas once claimed and twists it. Each note burns the cool evening air, thinning the mist until it resembles breath on frosted glass. You can smell it too, ozone, like the sky is about to split in lightning, though not a single cloud stirs above. Impressive, right? Apollo says, his voice not loud but threaded into every note. It's the kind of voice that doesn't need volume because it's already installed in the surround sound of your brain. Marsyas doesn't answer. His jaw clenches. His chest rises with the stubbornness of someone who knows the crowd is shifting, yet refuses to bow. One of the nymphs whispers, "He plays like he's unraveling light itself." Another nymph mutters back, "Yes, but it feels more like he's strangling it." Apollo's laugh sparks again, smooth and controlled. You can almost see it ripple outward like an expensive cologne, sprayed too generously in a crowded elevator. The lyre flares. Notes tumble over each other in dazzling, impossible scales, faster than fingers should be able to move, faster than thought. It reminds you of those YouTube piano prodigy videos where a 7-year-old plays Rachmaninoff while you're still trying to master chopsticks. And yet, beneath all that speed and shine, there's something brittle. You notice it the way you notice fake marble countertops, pretty from a distance, but scratch the surface, and it's just laminate. The crowd doesn't see it yet. They lean forward, dazzled, lulled. Music cascades through the grove like sunlight, dripping into a wine glass, filling every empty corner. The temperature rises, not much, just enough to bead sweat at your temples. Someone in the back coughs and the sound dies awkwardly, swallowed by Apollo's glittering arrogance. You wonder, is this still music, or has he turned it into weaponry? Each note feels aimed precise, like an arrow tipped not with iron but with shame. Marsyas finally speaks, low but firm. "You play well." Apollo's eyes narrow, his smile never flickering. "Only well?" "Only too well," Marsyas replies, his voice edged with something between respect and defiance. The audience exhales, an audible wave of tension that smells faintly of pine sap and roasted figs. Apollo's fingers blur. He launches into a melody that doesn't just shimmer, it sears. Patterns coil like fire snakes, dazzling but suffocating. The grove itself seems to recoil, shadows bending inward. As though roots and branches are trying to shield themselves, you realize your own heartbeat is syncing with the tempo, too fast. Too shallow. Like when you've had 3 espressos back to back and immediately regret it. A satyr leans toward you, muttering, "This is no contest anymore. It's theatre." Or tyranny, someone else murmurs. And there it is, the word. Tyranny. Not spoken loud but felt, rippling like a crack in glass. Apollo pretends not to hear. His music swells higher, higher, so high it scrapes the edges of pain. The tones flicker like strobe lights, so fast your eyes can't keep up, so intense you almost expect nosebleeds in the front row. You think about historical spectacles where overwhelming display replaced reason, like the fireworks over Versailles, so lavish they drained treasuries while peasants counted moldy loaves. Or the triumphs of Rome, where generals paraded spoils and chained captives, dazzling crowds into forgetting the blood that bought the show. And yet there's another fact, one less rehearsed. The lyre Apollo plays is said to have been strung with the sinews of past sacrifices, not exactly the kind of thing you'd put in a museum gift shop. Historians still debate whether that's poetic invention or some darker truth left off the pretty frescoes. The nymphs begin to shift, restless. Their eyes sparkle, yes, but their shoulders tighten. They sway as though enchanted yet drained, like party guests stuck listening to a DJ who refuses to leave the booth at 4 a.m. The goat, bless its timing, lets out another abrupt sneeze. This time it ricochets straight through Apollo's shining scales. For a heartbeat, the illusion falters. A few satyrs chuckle nervously. One nymph even claps a hand to her mouth, eyes wide. Apollo's glare shoots daggers quick as a dropped text you instantly regret sending. The laughter dies immediately. He doesn't stop. Instead, he plays harder. Strings snap, just one, but the sound cuts sharper than thunder. The broken thread curls like smoke, but Apollo keeps going as though daring anyone to acknowledge the flaw. You smell the singed fiber of the lyre's string, bitter and sharp like burnt hair. The air feels heavier, pressing down like a weighted blanket gone slightly wrong. Then Apollo does something unexpected. He begins to sing. His voice threads into the lyre, smooth, golden, yet chilling. The words are ancient, half forgotten, about order, about hierarchy, about gods ruling mortals as naturally as daylight rules night. The sound is beautiful, yes, but also suffocating. It wraps around your ears like silk cords, leaving you breathless, almost trapped. You lean toward Marsyas in your mind, whispering silently, "Don't let it swallow you." But Marsyas only breathes, slow and steady. He closes his eyes, as though gathering something not of dazzle but of depth. The crowd sways, torn between awe and unease. It's the same feeling you imagine people had at the Nuremberg rallies, dazzled by symmetry and light, even while some part of them knew the glitter was laced with steel. Overwhelming display has always been a weapon, then now, and here in this grove. The music rises one last time, shattering the night with brilliance so blinding, you half expect your phone screen to dim automatically. Notes scatter like shards of glass, clattering through the mist. And then, silence. Apollo lowers his hand, sweat gleaming like molten gold on his brow. He doesn't look at Marsyas yet. He looks at the crowd basking in the hush, drinking it in like fine wine. He wants their awe. He demands it. But under that silence, you can feel it again. That brittle crack, that waiting tremor. The silence does not belong to him, and Marsyas, chest steady, breath unbroken, seems to know it too. The night has not chosen yet, but it will. And in that stillness, you sense the next sound won't be Apollo's at all. The grove exhales as Apollo lowers his hand. The glittering flood of sound collapses into silence that feels too heavy for the branches above. You hear sweat drip from Apollo's wrist onto the taut wood of the lyre, each patter oddly loud, like drops falling in a cavern. The god waits, eyes gleaming with that look teachers give when they know you forgot your homework, but are just letting you sweat before they pounce. Marsyas does not move at once. His flute rests in his hand, his chest lifting slow, calm. The mist that Apollo's heat had thinned begins to curl back in, gathering around his ankles, wrapping him in pale scarves. You notice the smell shift too. Less of burnt fiber and sharp ozone, more of damp earth, wet moss. The sort of smell you get when you've left laundry in the machine overnight and only remembered the next morning. The crowd leans in. A satyr whispers, "He'll break." No one stands against that kind of fire. Another replies, "But he hasn't broken yet." You can almost hear the punctuation at the end of that statement, like a door clicking shut. Marsyas raises the flute. His hands tremble, not much but enough to catch a gleam of reflected torchlight. Apollo notices, of course, and smiles, a curl of triumph. Yet when Marsyas lifts the instrument to his lips, the air doesn't crack or dazzle. Instead, it sighs. The sound is low, almost nothing, just a breath through reed and wood. It brushes the grove like the edge of sleep brushing your eyelids after a too long Netflix binge. Gentle, persistent, not dazzling, not commanding. Just steady. Apollo tilts his head, one brow arching. "Is this all?" he murmurs. Marsyas does not answer. He only breathes again, sending another note into the night. And something happens. The mist responds, not shrinking this time, but swirling outward, stirred by the resonance. The notes don't blaze like Apollo's. They cling, seep, wrap around you. They smell faintly of olive smoke and river reeds, faintly metallic like coins pressed too long into sweaty palms. The air cools again, and you realize you're shivering lightly. The crowd begins to murmur, not in awe at first, but in recognition. The sound feels familiar, ordinary, the way a lullaby hummed by a tired mother cuts deeper than any professional soprano. A nymph wipes her cheek, surprised to find it damp. You catch snippets of dialogue. It's nothing like the gods' music. No, but it's like us. And there it is, the pivot. Apollo's music dazzled like fireworks on Bastille Day, calculated to overwhelm. Marsyas's tones are closer to the creak of a ship's hull, the hum of a spinning wheel, the soft clatter of loaves on a baker's table. Music of survival, not spectacle. You think of history, of Dunkirk, when small civilian boats carried soldiers home. No grand fleet, no dazzle, just persistence and ordinary bravery stitched into waves. This flute feels the same. Fragile, ridiculous, yet somehow exactly what the moment needs. Apollo's eyes narrow. He plucks one string sharply, as if to cut through the growing pull of Marsyas's tune. The lyre rings like a blade. Marsyas does not falter. He holds the note longer, until it curves around Apollo's sting like water slipping past stone. The goat, yes, that eternal goat, lets out a bleat that fits so seamlessly into the flute's line that half the crowd chuckles before they realize it wasn't intentional. Marsyas lowers the flute for a heartbeat, then inclines his head toward the animal. "Thank you," he says. The crowd ripples with laughter. Not cruel, not mocking, but warm, collective. It rolls through the grove like a breeze rattling leaves. Apollo's jaw tightens. The nymph who earlier whispered about strangled light leans toward another. "Do you feel it?" His sound isn't brighter. It's heavier. It stays. "Yes," the other murmurs. "Like footsteps that don't vanish on the road," Marsyas continues, his fingers steadier now. He does not attempt flourishes or impossible scales. He stays within a narrow range, repeating, weaving, reinforcing. It's less a performance than a ritual, each phrase settling deeper into the soil. The grove itself seems to lean toward him. Branches creak, leaves tremble. You smell sap loosening, sticky and sweet. Apollo interrupts again, flinging a cascade of notes sharp as hailstones. The sound glitters, forcing heads back, but it passes quickly, sliding away. Marsyas answers not with speed, but with weight. A single phrase repeated, like hammer strokes into iron. You realize you're swaying. So is most of the crowd, not dazzled, entranced. It's the same way soldiers once marched to fifes. Not because they were pretty, but because the rhythm kept their feet moving through mud and blood. There's another odd fact that slips into your mind. Shepherds in Phrygia, Marsyas's homeland, used flutes to calm livestock. Not as glamorous as Apollo's myths, but useful, grounded. Some say even wild animals would quiet at those notes. Historians still debate whether that's truth or romantic invention, but as you watch, the goat settles into the grass, chewing with obvious contentment. Marsyas pauses only briefly for breath. His eyes remain closed, lashes damp from mist. He looks less like a challenger now, more like a conduit, a vessel for something older than gods. Apollo's fingers twitch. For the first time, doubt flashes in his eyes. His music can outshine, outpace, outdazzle, but can it outlast? Marsyas breathes again. The tune rises, simple but insistent. It smells like riverbanks after rain. Feels like a hand steadying your elbow when you stumble. The kind of sound you don't notice until it's gone, and then you crave it. A satyr mutters to his friend. The god burns. But Marsyas endures. The friend nods slowly. And endurance is harder to kill. Apollo forces another smile, all gold teeth and strained charm. Pretty for a mortal. Marsyas finally opens his eyes. True, for a mortal. The exchange lands heavier than any note. The crowd hears it and something shifts. The grove is no longer dazzled. It is listening. And you know, though Apollo will not admit it, that this listening frightens him more than silence ever could. The night holds its breath again. But this time it leans toward Marsyas, and in the distance, faint but inevitable, you sense the shadow of punishment stirring, waiting for Apollo's pride to demand its price. You don't realize at first when the shift happens. The grove has been so full of mist, of breath, of notes weaving in and out, that when something heavier slides into the edges of perception, it takes you a moment to name it. The air cools further, yes, but not like before. This is a different kind of coolness, a hush that feels cosmic rather than seasonal. You glance at the branches, and they aren't just trembling with music now. They're bending very slightly, as if weighed down by unseen hands. The gods are leaning in. You hear it first as a flutter of wings overhead. Not doves, not owls. Something larger, heavier. Wings that cut through mist the way scissors cut paper. The crowd looks up. For a moment you expect clouds. Instead the moon shifts, a silver coin tilting in a god's palm. Shadows stretch longer across the ground, colder than they should be. Marsyas keeps playing steady. Apollo stiffens. He knows. You smell something new, the sharp tang of ozone again, but this time not from Apollo's strings. It's the smell before lightning, like when you step outside just as a summer storm breaks. It rides down the back of your throat, metallic, insistent. A nymph whispers, "They're watching." Her companion shivers. They always watch, but not like this. And you know they're right. It's the same sensation as when you open a group chat, thinking it's private gossip, and then realize the boss has been lurking the whole time. That slow, stomach-dropping recognition that your words are no longer safe. Apollo forces a smile, stretching gold across his lips. "Do you think your little song matters to them?" Marsyas doesn't answer. He breathes, plays, breathes again. The rhythm settles deeper into your bones, simple, unhurried. From the corner of your eye, you notice a ripple in the mist. It thickens, swirls, and for an instant, shapes into a face, not clear but suggestive. Someone, some presence listening. The satyr nearest you mutters, "That's no mortal fog." You nod before you realize you've nodded. Apollo strums again, sharp, trying to reclaim the space. The lyre's notes burst outward like fireworks. For a heartbeat, the grove blazes. But then, as quickly as they appeared, the sparks dim, swallowed by mist. The silence afterward feels louder than his music. You hear a dialogue not spoken with mouths but felt in the marrow of your bones. A voice like cracked marble says, "He dares." Another, softer, responds, "He endures." The crowd shivers. Someone laughs nervously, too loudly. The way people laugh during an awkward wedding toast. Apollo glares. Do not mistake persistence for power. Marsyas lowers the flute briefly, his chest rising. Do not mistake power for permanence. The air tightens. You realize you're holding your breath, same as everyone else. The gods notice more now. You feel their attention trickling like cold rain down your spine. A wind brushes past that smells of laurel leaves crushed too fine, bitter, medicinal. The flames in the torches sputter, not out but bending sideways as if bowing to a presence too immense to resist. And then, strangest of all, you hear laughter. Not mortal laughter, not goat bleats or satyr snickers. Higher, brighter, overlapping. It feels wrong, like bells ringing in a cave, too echoing, too large. The gods are amused. You remember history, how in ancient Rome, gladiatorial games often had an audience of senators and emperors who decided with a tilt of a thumb whether a man lived or died. The crowd screamed, but the rulers whispered, and only their whispers mattered. Here it feels the same. The grove roars with mortal hearts, but the divine whispers are sharpening the outcome. And here's an odd fact. There are records of musicians in Greek sanctuaries playing not for human crowds, but as offerings, flutes left to rot in caves, lyres buried in shrines. Some say the gods listened even then, in echoes, in vibrations no human ear caught. Historians still debate whether those were acts of devotion or fear. Marsyas does not flinch under the divine attention. If anything, his back straightens. His music deepens. You hear it ripple differently now, still steady, still human, but with a new density. It's like bread that has risen overnight, fuller, richer, stronger for waiting. Apollo cannot match that weight with brilliance alone. He strikes again, faster this time, a cascade of notes that should dazzle. They do dazzle briefly, like scrolling TikTok at 3 a.m., each clip funnier, louder, stranger than the last. But then the feed ends and you're left staring at the wall. Marcias keeps playing. His song is slower than scrolling, but it lasts longer. It clings. The crowd tilts further. Shoulders ease. Breath falls into rhythm with his. Even the goat, traitorous as ever, bleats softly in time like a furry metronome. Apollo snaps. Do you think you charm them? They are not yours to charm. The mist face ripples again, and this time you swear you hear words. Not charm, truth, the crowd gasps. Someone drops a clay cup. It hits stone with a crack that echoes like thunder. A shepherd blurts out, "Did you hear that?" A nymph hisses, "Shut up!" You'll draw their eyes, too late. You feel the divine gaze settle heavier, like a hand pressing on your skull. Cold sweat breaks along your spine. Marcias does not waver. His fingers keep moving. His song does not fight the gods. It simply continues, ordinary, unashamed. Apollo is radiant still, but there's strain now. Like a politician who's losing the room but refuses to stop smiling. The gods are not all on one side. Some lean toward Apollo, shimmering with golden approval. Others lean toward Marcias, shadows deepening. You can feel it like tectonic plates grinding beneath your feet. One last exchange happens, quiet but razor-edged. Apollo, they will choose me. Marcias, then let them choose, and the grove quivers. Not just with music or mist, but with the weight of choice being witnessed on more than mortal terms. The gods have noticed. They are listening, and you know when gods listen too closely, punishment always follows. The air in the grove feels heavier now, and you catch yourself swallowing against a dryness in your throat that doesn't quite belong to thirst. The gods have noticed, and once they notice, mortals rarely leave unscathed. You glance around and the ordinary faces, farmers with dust still clinging to their sandals, shepherd boys still smelling faintly of sheep, travelers with cloaks patched too many times, now seem dwarfed beneath a new kind of glow. It's as though the crowd has split in two without moving an inch. One half still flesh and bone, the other half shimmering with presences too large for bodies, laughter too wide for mouths. You hear the sound first, low murmurs like wind skimming amphorae in a cellar. Voices not meant to be overheard. The kind of whispers that make you wonder if you're the topic of conversation. The torches flicker differently now, flaring green at their tips as though pine resin suddenly turned unnatural. The mist thickens and thins in rhythm with breaths you can't see. And while Marcias plays on, quiet but steady, and Apollo twitches with glittering irritation, you can't help but feel you've all become background extras in a play whose true audience sits just beyond the veil. A goat bleats again, this one from the back, and the sound feels painfully mortal, like someone's ringtone blaring during a presidential inauguration. You half expect Apollo to throw a lightning bolt just to silence it, but he only glares, jaw tight, as if even he knows that right now the attention isn't his to command. Are they enjoying this? You hear someone whisper beside you. Define enjoying, another mutters, their voice shaking as though the word itself might carry overhead. The gods have strange tastes after all. The Roman Colosseum once filled with cheers at spectacles that now make you wince. Gladiators clashing, animals let loose, even mock naval battles when they flooded the arena floor. People clapped and wagered, watching with delight. And here, the divine audience watches with a similar appetite, though you can't tell whether they favor Marcias's persistence or Apollo's fury. Your skin prickles as a sudden draft snakes between your ankles. The grove smells different now, less moss and pine, more metallic like iron just kissed by rain. You think of swords pulled from scabbards, though no one has drawn steel. The weight of judgment presses down, heavier than the stones of Delphi, and you wonder if it's possible to sweat beneath your fingernails. Meanwhile, Marcias holds steady. His cheeks puff just enough, fingers darting with the precision of someone weaving a basket in a storm, refusing to drop a reed. You lean with him, unconsciously matching your breathing to his. And the crowd, mortal and otherwise, seems to sway as one. Apollo, in contrast, starts to tighten. His shoulders lift in little jerks, his golden hair almost sparking with the friction of his temper. His lyre sings brightly, too brightly as though trying to outshine the moon, but the brilliance feels strained, like a student pulling an all-nighter and insisting they're totally fine. Little Satyr thinks he's clever, Apollo mutters. Too low for most to hear, but the words carry to you anyway, curling through the mist. Better clever than brittle, Marcius answers softly, flute never leaving his lips, and you almost choke on your own breath because did he just talk back to a god mid-performance? The gods laugh, not all but enough that the ground trembles with it. It's not cruel laughter nor kind. It's more like the chuckle of someone watching a tightrope walker slip, curious whether the fall will entertain. The unease spreads through the mortal crowd, rippling like concentric rings in a pond when a stone drops. You notice how people begin to shift, unconsciously leaning toward Marcius, though none dare say it aloud. Their bodies betray them, shoulders relaxing, eyes softening, as his steady music lulls them into something that feels safe, almost familiar, like a lullaby their grandmothers once hummed. Apollo's brilliance dazzles, yes, but it also blinds. And who wants to squint forever? Another gust of divine attention sweeps the grove, colder this time, prickling your skin like static before a thunderstorm. You smell frankincense, or maybe that's just someone clutching an amulet too tightly. Either way, the scent mixes with sweat and damp wool, clinging to the back of your throat. It reminds you of another moment in history, when Constantinople fell in 1453. Eyewitnesses said the city's sky turned strange colors, the air carried omens, and even candles flickered with an unnatural pall. Ordinary people felt the presence of forces beyond them. And though they whispered about angels or demons, what they truly felt was dread, the uneasy knowledge that something bigger was watching, judging and about to decide the course of their lives. Tonight in this grove you feel something eerily similar. The unease sharpens when a voice not quite belonging to either side rises from the shadows. Play Little Satyr, it croons, both amused and sinister. Show us how long lungs can hold against flame. You shiver. It doesn't matter that the words weren't meant for you. You still feel their chill. Someone behind you mutters, "Maybe we should go." And miss this? Their companion snaps, half terrified, half thrilled. "We'd be cursed for leaving." You don't argue. They're probably right. The tension becomes physical now. You can almost feel the ground lean. Apollo strums faster, notes scattering like coins tossed from a balcony. Marcius, unflustered, plays slower, firmer, as though anchoring each breath to the soil. It's a duel of opposites, and the audience sways between them uneasy, waiting to see which rhythm will claim them. An odd fact slips into your mind. Did you know that in some ancient festivals, judges were chosen not by rank but by lottery, pulling names from jars? The gods don't bother with jars, but the same randomness lingers in their whims. Today they favor laughter, tomorrow tragedy. Historians still debate whether competitions like this were ever purely about skill or always about spectacle, politics, and who sat in the audience. Standing here with divine eyes glinting in the mist, you feel the debate answered. It was always about who was watching. The goat sneezes yet again, because of course it does, and this time the laughter that ripples through the grove is too real to suppress. Even a goddess snickers, a sound like glass bells tumbling. Marcius lowers his flute half a beat, bows his head slightly toward the goat and murmurs, "My best accompanist." The audience erupts, mortal and divine alike, in a rush of laughter that almost drowns out Apollo's next chord. Almost. Apollo's eyes flare, sun-bright and unblinking. His next note slices so sharply, it feels like it could shave the hairs on your arm. But the moment is already tilted. The audience no longer feels purely his. And in this unease you realize lies the true danger. Not Marcius losing, but Apollo failing to command the room. The grove breathes unevenly, caught between applause and silence, dazzled brilliance and steady breath. You shift your weight on the damp earth, suddenly hyper-aware that whichever way the gods lean, the mortals will follow, and whichever way the mortals lean, someone divine will take offense. The night feels balanced on a reed, thin, fragile, ready to snap. And as Marcius steadies his next note, the air shivers with a foreboding sense that the music isn't the only thing about to be tested. You can almost hear Apollo's pride grinding its teeth. The grove is still swaying gently with Marcius's steady tune, and the god's amusement rings like a bell. Only Apollo seems unable to stop hearing. His brilliance has met resistance, not because Marsyas is louder or grander, but because the satyr simply refuses to break. And that, you realize, is far more dangerous to Apollo than losing a note, because what's a god without his audience? The air presses warmer against your face now, as though someone leaned a brazier a little too close. The torches spit sparks, one guttering low before flaring up with a flash of unnatural blue. You smell the tang of burning pine mixed with something sweeter, like honey caramelizing, but in a way that makes your teeth ache instead of your stomach growl. Apollo flicks his hair back with an almost casual gesture, the kind pop stars do when they're trying to pretend sweat is just stage glitter. His lips curl into a smile that's half charm, half warning. You can sense it. The trick is coming. The lyre sings again, but this time his fingers move differently, more theatrical, less musical. The chords stretch and bend like molten glass, shimmering, bending light. He shifts his stance, rising slightly on his toes, chest open like a dancer. It's not just about sound anymore. It's about spectacle. And you know it the instant you hear the gasp ripple through the audience. He's changing the rules mid-game. Wait, what's he doing? Someone mutters beside you. Something unfair. Another whispers back, though their tone carries an edge of awe. Apollo tilts his head, lashes lowering, and then he sings. Not with words at first, but with vowels so pure they shimmer like crystals struck with sunlight. The sound slides over your skin, making every hair stand on end. It's like listening to auto-tune if auto-tune were invented by thunderclouds and arrogance. Marsyas blinks, falters for half a beat, but only half, and plays on. Yet the rules have shifted. The god isn't just plucking strings now. He's adding his voice. This is the trick. Apollo is inventing a new contest inside the old one. The divine audience leans closer, delighted. You hear faint laughter, like coins spilling from a purse. Someone claps. A sound so thunderous you're not sure if it's a giant or just the sound of the sky itself. Marsyas doesn't break. His flute continues, notes threading between Apollo's voice like roots weaving through stone. But the weight has changed, and you feel it as surely as when an umpire suddenly moves the goalposts mid-match. The smell of damp wool rises sharper as bodies press closer, everyone craning to see. A shepherd near you mutters, "That's not fair." His friend elbows him, eyes wide. When are gods ever fair? You can't help but smile, even while your stomach twists. It's like watching a board game where one player suddenly declares, "Oh, by the way, I'm the banker and the rule book." You want to shout, "That's cheating," but your voice would be swallowed by divine laughter. Apollo raises the stakes further. His singing sharpens into words now, each syllable ringing like hammered bronze. Odes of order, hierarchy, beauty as he defines it. The grove tilts beneath the weight of those words, soil pressing harder beneath your toes. The torches flare white, and for a moment you're blinded, eyelids glowing red from the inside. Still Marsyas holds. He lets Apollo's voice roll overhead like storm clouds, and keeps threading his melody through the cracks. It's a quiet rebellion, breath after breath, as if saying, "Your rules don't erase my song and the gods." They love it. Their laughter rumbles, some voices shrill as flutes, others booming like temple drums. One voice, definitely hearers sharp and honeyed at once, cuts through. He cheats prettily, doesn't he? Another answers, "All the better for the tale." Your skin chills even as the air heats because you realize something awful. The gods aren't interested in justice or fairness. They're interested in entertainment. It reminds you of 79 CE, when Mount Vesuvius erupted over Pompeii. Some people tried to flee, others prayed, but a few, historians record this, climbed higher to watch the spectacle, as though disaster was theater. You think about that now. Mortals burning while others applauded the view. The gods tonight are those watchers, leaning on the balcony rail of the cosmos, grinning while Marsyas sweats. And speaking of sweat, you feel it trickle down your own spine, cool against overheated skin. The scent of fear, sharp and salty, mingles with pine smoke. Your mouth dries, though the air tastes damp as if rain threatens. Apollo shifts again, smugness dripping from every motion. "Try this," he purrs loud enough for all to hear, and he begins to play upside down. That's right. He flips the lyre behind his back, strumming without looking, chords still dazzling. It's a stage move, pure and theatrical. The kind of thing you'd see at a rock concert when the guitarist decides gravity is optional. The crowd gasps, torn between awe and indignation. Marsyas lifts an eyebrow, but his flute keeps steady. Without pausing, he leans back slightly and begins to circle as he plays, feet crunching softly on the damp soil. The satyr doesn't flip his instrument, but he moves with it, weaving through the grove as though reminding everyone that music isn't about tricks, it's about breath. A murmur rises through the mortals. He's not losing. No, another agrees, voice trembling. He's surviving. But survival may not be enough. You see Apollo's trick catching on. The divine judges are clapping in time, stomping ethereal feet. The grove shakes as if roots themselves tremble. And you feel dread rise in your chest like a drumbeat. No matter how well Marsyas plays, Apollo can keep inventing new rules until the game is his alone. There's a strange comfort in remembering history here. Did you know that in the Olympic Games of ancient Greece, cheating wasn't exactly rare? Athletes bribed judges, sabotaged rivals, even carved false starting lines. One runner famously hired a trainer who drilled him not on speed but on bribery strategy. Yet the record still counted the winners as legitimate, because the audience loved the spectacle more than the fairness. Historians still debate whether glory or gamesmanship mattered more. Tonight, with Apollo's smug grin widening, the answer feels obvious. The goat bleats once more, though this time it sounds weary, as if even it knows the tide is shifting. Marsyas lowers his flute a fraction, breath misting in the cooling air. He doesn't stop, but his eyes, dark and steady, lift toward Apollo with a look that's half challenge, half sorrow. And you? You're caught in the tension, swaying between awe and dread, between laughter at Apollo's stage antics and sympathy for Marsyas's quiet endurance. The gods may be entertained, but you feel a knot in your chest that says the show is barreling towards something cruel. The torches hiss louder, smoke curling in your nostrils. Your skin prickles as Apollo leans forward, eyes glinting gold, lips curling as if he's about to pull one more card from his divine sleeve. And you sense it. The next trick won't just shift the rules, it will break them entirely. You hear it first in your chest, the faint drum of breath pushed to its limit, the reed pipe vibrating as if it's been wrung out like an old washcloth. The grove feels tighter now, the pine-scented air sticky and close, like you're standing in a sauna where someone keeps adding buckets of steam but refuses to open the door. Torches burn lower, their tips bleeding smoke that curls into your nostrils, bitter and sharp. And Marsyas leans into his instrument with the kind of focus you usually only see in professional chess players, 3 espressos deep. Apollo, meanwhile, isn't sweating. Of course he isn't, he's glowing, literally. His shoulders gleam like someone turned on a ring light, his skin catching the fire as if he's auditioning for a skincare commercial. But you notice the corners of his mouth tighten every time the satyr pulls another phrase from the pipes that steadies the crowd. Now you realize this isn't just a performance anymore. It's survival, the kind you might feel if your job interview suddenly turned into a karaoke battle against Beyoncé. The gods above shift in their laughter. It's not light anymore. It rolls like coins dropped into a bronze bowl, metallic and endless. One of them whispers something that makes another snort so loudly, the smoke trembles. You can't tell if they're rooting for Marsyas, or just waiting for the moment Apollo finally cracks. Marsyas's hands shake, tiny tremors, but he doesn't let them take control. He grips the pipe tighter, lips pressed white, eyes flicking toward the goat who has now planted itself beside him like a loyal roadie. "Stay with me," you hear him mutter under his breath. The goat answers with a grunt that sounds suspiciously like, "You got this, buddy." Apollo strums his lyre again, and the notes come out like glass breaking, sharp, glittering, dangerous. He adds a flourish, then sings, his voice slicing through the grove. The audience gasps. "Impressive," one god says dryly. "Show off," another replies, and you almost laugh, because even divine commentary sounds like YouTube comments section. The satyr struggles harder now. Each breath is a wrestle, ribs straining, veins standing out on his temples. You feel the ache in your own lungs just watching him. The torchlight makes the sweat on his forehead bead like molten silver, and he wipes it away with the back of his hand, never letting the pipe fall silent. It's like watching an athlete push past the wall in a marathon, the exact moment where the body screams stop, but the spirit says go. "Don't stop," someone near you whispers. You can't tell if it's to him or to themselves. A gust of wind slinks through the grove, carrying the smell of roasted chestnuts from some mortal campsite far beyond the woods. It mixes strangely with the incense and sweat here. And for a second you think of modern street fairs, sticky sugar, smoke, the hum of too many voices. The moment grounds you. Marsyas isn't a god. He's closer to the man hauling crates, the woman juggling too many children, the vendor keeping a smile even when their back aches. And suddenly you remember the Battle of Marathon, 490 BCE, where exhausted Greeks sprinted 26 miles back to Athens after fighting Persians, lungs on fire, legs giving out, and still delivered the message of victory before collapsing. That same determination ripples now through Marsyas's chest. He's not fighting for a prize. He's fighting because he refuses to be erased. Apollo's eyes narrow, golden irises like molten coins. He shifts the rules again, singing, then flipping the lyre upside down, plucking the strings with a flourish that makes the torches flare as if even fire bends to his will. The crowd murmurs, dazzled. Marsyas counters not with spectacle, but with steadiness, pressing his lips tighter to the reeds, forcing another wave of melody that carries like a heartbeat. Is that all? Apollo mocks, voice smooth. Marsyas pauses only long enough to answer, enough to keep them listening. The grove tilts between them. You catch yourself swaying again, not to Apollo's tricks, but to Marsyas's stubborn rhythm. It's almost funny, like watching a flashy magician pull doves from sleeves, while some old man in the corner just keeps playing the same 3 chords on guitar. And somehow the guitar feels truer, yet the struggle is carving him hollow. His shoulders hunch, his knees buckle for a moment, and his breath rattles like bellows running out of air. You can hear it in the breaks of the pipe, those micro-hesitations that speak louder than any boast. Still, he presses on, refusing to stop. It's painful and inspiring at the same time, like watching someone attempt push-ups long past their limit, arms shaking, face red, and you half expect a motivational playlist to start blasting in the background. Above, the gods lean closer, their laughter fading into silence now. They're not amused anymore. They're fascinated. A mortal shouldn't last this long. A satyr shouldn't dare. And yet here he is, teeth gritted, body trembling, sweat dripping from his chin to darken the dirt at his feet. Historians still debate, you remind yourself quietly, whether this contest was ever fair, or whether it was designed from the start as a trap. The goat shifts its weight, lets out another bleat, and the crowd chuckles nervously. Even in struggle, Marsyas finds a spark of humor. He bows again slightly, gasping, "My duet partner never misses a note." A ripple of laughter rolls through the grove. Even gods smile, if only for a second. But the air is tightening, the music bending under weight. You can feel it pressing on your skin, warm and stifling, like standing too close to a bonfire. The torches hiss and gutter, sparks leaping, and the shadows grow longer. Apollo's glow hardens, his fingers flying across the strings with a fury that turns harmony into weapon. Marsyas answers with breath after breath, fighting the fire with roots, holding steady though his chest heaves and his legs tremble. You realize then, this isn't about who plays better, it's about who breaks first. And every god, every mortal, even the goat, knows exactly how dangerous that breaking point will be when it comes. The grove holds its breath with him, waiting, and you feel in your bones that the next note Apollo strikes will not just test Marsyas's lungs, it will decide his fate. It happens faster than your breath can catch. Apollo strikes a final chord and it slices the grove in half. The sound is so sharp, it makes the hairs on your arms prickle, as if someone dragged a cold fork across your skin. The torches jump with the vibration, sparks snapping upward, and then, just like that, the music ends. You're left in a silence so sudden it feels louder than any noise that came before. Marsyas's reed pipes slip from his lips. The first thing you notice is the absence of breath. No wheeze, no rasp, no stubborn rhythm, just the hollow quiet of lungs that finally gave out. He bends forward, clutching his knees, his chest heaving like a bellows that's lost its wind. The goat beside him lets out a short, mournful bleat, as if filling in the missing note, and the absurdity of it almost makes you laugh. Almost. You hear Apollo's sandals scrape as he lowers the lyre. His glow dims just enough that you see the triumph in his expression, a smile thin as a knife edge. The gods above exhale in unison, their amusement collapsing into whispers, the way a theater audience murmurs after the curtain falls. It's not applause. It's something heavier, Something waiting. You smell pine smoke thickening, sinking into your clothes, and beneath it the sour tang of sweat. Marsyas is yours, everyone pressed into the moment. The air is still hot, sticky, but now there's no music to move through it. It just clings, damp and suffocating, like the inside of a tent after a long festival night. Marsyas straightens slowly, reed pipes hanging limp at his side. His eyes search the crowd, unfocused, red-rimmed. He begins, but the words choke in his throat. The silence is merciless. Even the crickets in the underbrush seem to have agreed to take the night off. Then Apollo's voice cuts through, smooth and clear. It is done. The words fall with the weight of law. A few gods nod. One claps once, lazily, like someone closing a book they didn't really enjoy. You can feel the tension shift. The contest isn't the question anymore. The question is what comes after. You're reminded suddenly of the fall of Constantinople in 1453, how one moment the cannons roared and walls shook, and the next, the city lay in eerie quiet, broken only by footsteps over rubble. That kind of silence feels unnatural, not peace but aftermath. That's what presses down on the grove now. Marsyas tries to lift the pipes again, maybe to play a single note, maybe to prove he still can, but his fingers fumble. The reeds slip, fall into the dirt with a dull thud. You hear it as though it's the loudest sound in the world. The goat shifts closer, nudges his leg, and Marsyas chuckles faintly, a sound brittle as glass. "Loyal even now," he whispers. Apollo tilts his head. "Is that laughter, satyr?" Marsyas straightens, weary but unbowed. "No, just breath. What little I have left." You want to cheer for that answer, but the crowd stays hushed. Even humor feels dangerous here, like tossing a lit match into dry grass. The air cools abruptly as a wind drifts through the grove, carrying the metallic tang of the lyre's fading resonance. You shiver. The silence thickens until it's a presence of its own, almost alive, crawling into your ears. Someone behind you mutters, "It shouldn't have ended this way." Another answers, "It always was going to." Historians still debate whether Marsyas truly failed by skill, or whether Apollo simply moved the finish line. But standing here, you don't need a scholar to tell you, failure doesn't always come from weakness. Sometimes it comes from the rules themselves. Marsyas closes his eyes. His chest rises, falls. For a heartbeat, you think he might collapse. Instead, he takes a slow step forward toward Apollo. "If silence is defeat," he says softly, "then let it be mine." Apollo doesn't answer. His smile deepens, but there's something cold in it now. The gods above shift uneasily. You get the sense they've stopped watching for music and started watching for punishment. The goat bleats again, sharp and stubborn, as if to protest. You almost want to pat it and say, "Same, buddy, same." The grove waits, you wait. And the silence stretches longer, heavier, until you realize this is not the end. This is only the pause before Apollo decides what kind of god he wants to be. The silence doesn't break gently. It's Apollo who slices through it, his voice sharper than the lyre string he'd just plucked into nothingness. "Let all hear," he declares, his tone smooth but bristling beneath, "that Marsyas challenged a god, and gods do not share crowns." The torches hiss, as if they've been offended too. The smoke curls higher, pine-scented and bitter, stinging your throat like an over-toasted marshmallow. You cough quietly, hoping no one notices, because in this moment every sound feels like it might draw Apollo's gaze. And really, you don't want that. Not tonight. You feel the heat tighten against your skin, sweat gluing your tunic to your back. Marsyas still stands, though just barely. His reed pipes lie in the dirt, one cracked from the fall. The goat noses at them, bleating as if trying to repair what can't be fixed. Somehow it's the bravest act you've seen all night. Apollo steps closer. His glow is softer now, less stage light and more surgical lamp. You hear the faint rustle of laurel leaves crowning his head, smell the clean, sun-warmed scent that clings to him, and it's unsettling how refreshing it feels compared to Marsyas's earthy musk. Like stepping from a crowded subway straight into a five-star hotel lobby. "Do you admit defeat?" Apollo asks, his tone the way a professor might address a student who forgot their homework. For the third time. Marsyas lifts his head, eyes red, voice hoarse. "I admit only that I cannot match a god who changes rules mid-song." The goat bleats loudly, almost like punctuation. Someone in the crowd chuckles nervously. You think, well, at least someone's got comedic timing. Apollo's smile freezes, then hardens. You mock even now? Marsyas sways, steadies himself, and replies, "No, I only breathe." The gods above shift restlessly, feathers rustling, robes whispering. Their eyes gleam like coins in a fountain at dusk. You can feel their unease. Judgment is entertaining until it gets bloody. And this is about to get bloody. The air cools as a breeze slips through the grove, carrying with it the faint smell of iron, like a blacksmith's forge left smoldering. You shiver, not from the temperature but from what the scent implies. Apollo raises the lyre not to play but as though it's a scepter. His judgment isn't going to be sung. It's going to be enacted. Marsyas, he intones, you sought to raise mortal breath against divine voice. For that you shall be unmade. A ripple moves through the crowd. You hear whispers, unmade. He means it. Not again. And here your mind wanders, as minds do when they need distance from horror. You recall the French Revolution, the guillotine in Paris. How silence followed each fall of the blade, silence heavy with both terror and satisfaction. Crowds came to watch, not for justice, but for spectacle. That same appetite hums here tonight. Marsyas spreads his arms, pipes forgotten, goat pressed against his side. His voice, ragged though it is, doesn't tremble. Then let your judgment be clear for all to hear. A god who cannot abide laughter is no god of music. That one lands like a slap. You half expect Apollo to burst into flames on the spot. Instead, he lowers his gaze, lashes golden, expression unreadable. A goddess nearby whispers, "He dares." Another replies, "He always did." Historians still debate whether Marsyas spoke these words or whether they were embroidered later by poets who loved underdogs. But standing here, you feel the rawness of it. Truth or invention, it cuts just the same. Apollo finally moves. His hand flicks, and invisible threads seem to wrap around Marsyas, pinning him where he stands. You see the satyr stiffen, his chest heaving, his skin flushing deep red. The goat bleats, frantic now, tugging at his leg. You whisper under your breath, "This isn't music anymore." And maybe Apollo hears you because his eyes flash, sweeping across the crowd. You freeze like a kid caught sneaking snacks during class. The god's gaze lingers for a heartbeat, then shifts away as though your voice is too small to matter. Still, your pulse hammers in your ears. The grove holds its breath. The torchlight wavers, colors bending strange, green one moment, gold the next. The smell of resin thickens, acrid, catching in your lungs. You wipe sweat from your brow and wish desperately for something mundane, like a fan or an iced coffee. Apollo speaks again, each word measured, deliberate. Let the world remember. Music belongs to the gods, not to satyrs who dare mock Olympus. Marsyas manages a laugh, or maybe it's a cough. Then your music will always sound lonely. That earns a sharp intake of breath from the audience. Even a crow perched on the branch above gives a scandalized squawk like, "Bro, really?" The silence that follows is heavier than before, the kind that makes your own heartbeat feel intrusive. You realize the judgment isn't just about Marsyas. It's about what happens to anyone who thinks they can stand against the divine stage. And yet, in Marsyas's broken breath, in his goat's stubborn bleat, in the unease of gods who suddenly don't find this entertaining anymore, you feel a tiny spark, a defiance that even judgment can't quite smother. The spark hovers there, fragile, dangerous, as Apollo raises his hand to deliver the final act. And you know, with a sinking certainty, that the grove is about to learn what it really costs when a god decides laughter is the greatest insult of all. You stand in the thick silence, a silence so heavy it feels like a damp wool cloak pressed over your shoulders, weighing you down. The torches sputter against the pine-scented dark, their flames bent by small gusts, as though the night itself cannot decide whether to breathe. Apollo's hand lingers in the air, fingers curled like a conductor about to signal the last terrible note. Marsyas does not flinch, though the shadows carve deep lines across his furred face, though his reed pipes lie abandoned at his hooves, though even the goat has fallen quiet, as if realizing jokes cannot save this moment. You smell resin dripping from wounded bark nearby, sharp and bitter, the forest itself bleeding in sympathy. Then Apollo lowers his hand. The verdict has already been spoken, but what follows is not sound, it is absence. An absence that feels louder than thunder. You hear a whispering from the grove. Not words, but the restless shifting of leaves, as if trees gossip like anxious villagers. Someone in the crowd coughs too loud and immediately regrets it. The air tastes metallic now, like pennies on your tongue. Or that moment when you realize you've bitten your lip and blood lingers. A woman near you mutters, "He was only laughing." and her neighbor hisses back, "Shh, you'll bring notice." You imagine them as neighbors across a thin apartment wall today, arguing in whispers about whether the upstairs tenant is dragging furniture at 2 a.m. or just roller skating in the kitchen. Some things never change. Complaints in the dark are eternal. The morning begins not with wails but with stillness. People bow their heads but not in respect, more in dread, like office workers, lowering their gaze when the boss storms past. The goat, faithful absurdist, edges closer to Marcias, pressing its head to his knee. The satyr lifts a hand, shaky but stubborn, and pats it once. "Stay back," he murmurs, voice hoarse as gravel dragged across wood. You still have laughter left. Someone behind you whispers, "He'll flay him." You hear it like gossip passed in a school hallway, the kind where everyone leans too close, pretending they don't care but hanging on every syllable. And the word flay lands heavy, a stone dropped into the stomach of the grove. The torches crackle again. Sparks leap, tiny comets spiraling upward before winking out as though mocking the very stars. And you remember something odd. In ancient Rome, mourning wasn't silent at all. Families hired professional mourners, women paid to weep dramatically, to scratch their faces until blood mixed with tears. Imagine that. An entire side hustle based on crying convincingly. Meanwhile, here in this grove, no one dares make such noise. The grief is quiet, compressed, like carbon waiting to become diamond. Apollo's eyes shift over the crowd. They shine not like sunlight, but like polished metal, hard, reflective, cold. "The gods decide," he says, voice smooth as honey spilled on stone. Marcias doesn't bow, he doesn't beg. He just lets out a laugh, not bright, not defiant, but cracked like the last echo of pottery breaking. "Then let them watch," he says, "and learn what laughter costs." You feel your own throat tighten. Around you, others do too. The sound is contagious, like an embarrassing ringtone going off in a crowded lecture hall. The laugh lingers, wobbling into silence. The air shifts cooler now. Maybe it's night deepening, or maybe it's the gods themselves exhaling. A boy in the crowd clutches his mother's hand, whispers, "Why doesn't anyone stop him?" The mother squeezes too tight and murmurs, "Because no one stops the sun from rising." You almost chuckle at the grim poetry of it. Kids always ask the blunt questions adults tiptoe around, like, "Why is the emperor naked?" Or "Who decided pizza needed pineapple?" The grove grows darker. The smoke climbs upward in slow ribbons, carrying with it a scent of scorched pitch and sweat. You imagine this scent clinging for days, as if grief has a laundry cycle it refuses to exit. Somewhere an owl calls, its hoot a hollow punctuation mark. You can't help but think of another morning. Gettysburg, 1863. Thousands of soldiers dead, and Lincoln's speech only a few hundred words long. Grief compressed into brevity, into words that survive centuries. Here, though, there will be no brevity, only drawn-out cruelty. Yet the weight feels the same. A place where breath itself is borrowed, where silence outweighs words. Then a small figure steps forward. A shepherd boy clutching a crooked staff, no more than 12. He kneels beside Marcias and places a sprig of thyme on the ground. "For courage," he whispers. It's almost laughable, herbs as a shield. And yet you catch Marcias's eyes flicker, softening, as though this gesture matters more than divine decree. From the gods above comes a ripple, something you feel in your spine rather than hear. Perhaps disapproval, perhaps indifference. Historians still debate whether such myths are warnings against arrogance or reflections of a darker truth. That laughter itself is dangerous when it dares climb Olympus. The mourning grows louder now, though still restrained. A woman hums under her breath, a tune not of triumph but of memory. Others pick it up, hesitant as though rediscovering how to sing in a place where music has been declared property of gods. The hum trembles uneven, but it fills the air. Apollo's jaw tightens. "Do you defy?" he asks, voice cutting through like a courtroom judge catching someone texting mid-trial. But the humming doesn't stop. A man near you murmurs, "It's not defiance, it's grief." Marcias smiles faintly, as though the melody itself is a memorial carved in breath. The ground beneath you feels colder, dampness seeping through your sandals. You wiggle your toes unconsciously, like trying to avoid stepping in a puddle at midnight. It doesn't help. The earth drinks sorrow, and you stand ankle-deep in it. Suddenly Marcias turns his gaze toward you, no, toward all of you, and speaks, hoarse but clear. "Remember this. when gods demand silence. Remember that laughter is not a crime until you swallow hard. It feels like he's talking directly to you, the modern you, the one with earbuds tangled in your pocket and a fridge light that always flickers. The goat bleats again, sharp like an alarm clock you didn't set. People jump, nervous laughter bubbling out despite themselves. Even here, comedy insists on sneaking in. Marcias chuckles too, the sound ragged but warm. See? Even goats get the joke, he rasps. Apollo raises his hand once more and the humming falters. The grove itself seems to hold its breath. And though morning has begun, you sense this is not its peak. Only its prologue. The silence before grief is carved into legend. The shadows deepen, and in them you sense something waiting. Not just punishment, but transformation, as though the grove itself will carry this memory long after flesh has gone. And so, as Apollo steps forward, the morning folds into quiet again, preparing itself for the shape sorrow will take next. You stand among the trees, their bark still holding the glow of torches that have long since burned to stubs. The grove hushed in, that way places become when memory outlives sound. The air carries the faint bite of cooled ash, mingled with the sweetness of time crushed underfoot where children once knelt. You hear no reed pipes now, no lyre, only the low hum of wind slipping through pine needles, like an audience still murmuring after the curtain has fallen. And yet the contest does not end. It lingers, stitched into the hush the way perfume lingers on a coat weeks after the party. The goat shifts, hooves pressing into soft earth, and lets out a bleat so resigned it might as well be a sigh. You almost answer back, because really, who wouldn't want closure from a farm animal who has now seen more high drama than half the politicians in history? The crowd has scattered, but their absence feels heavy, like the empty seats in an arena after the final whistle. You step closer to where Marcias once stood, and the ground feels warmer, as though the memory itself still radiates heat. Do you remember it the same way? You imagine someone whispering beside you. You murmur back, how could anyone forget? The dialogue doesn't need a speaker. It's the grove itself asking, and you supplying the only answer possible. A faint humming drifts through your ears, whether from the wind or imagination you can't tell. It threads together the laughter, the defiance, the silence, all of it carried forward like a folk song whose singer is forgotten, but whose tune refuses to die. Even Apollo's name, bright as sunlight, seems softened here, blurred by branches that do not care for winners, only roots. You glance up, and the stars wink like students in the back row, half asleep, still pretending to pay attention. You can almost hear the rustle of papyrus, where scribes centuries later would write down the story, shifting it, polishing it, sometimes smudging truth like ink in sweaty palms. Historians still debate whether contests like this ever happened in reality, or whether they were always staged in the safe theater of myth, where memory could flex without consequence. But you know better, because you smell the pine. You feel the sting in your throat, you remember the goat. And surely no one invents a goat like that. Time folds. You stand in Rome centuries later, in the shadow of the Colosseum, hearing a crowd roar as gladiators clash. A well-known event, etched into stone and blood. Yet beneath the noise you hear the same silence that followed Apollo's chord. The same hush after Marcias fell quiet. The architecture changes, the costumes vary, but the silence after spectacle always tastes of iron and ash, and time folds again. You're back in the grove, tracing the rough bark of a tree scarred long ago. Someone once said the tree grew from Marcias's remains, his skin transformed into bark, his voice still sighing through its branches. It's a lesser-known fact, one not in every retelling, but you lean in and swear the wood hums faintly, as if agreeing. Was it worth it? You ask softly. A breeze answers, rustling leaves with a dry chuckle. You picture Marcias giving you a half-bow, pipes tucked under his arm, goat nodding at his side, both of them far less broken in memory than in the moment itself. Maybe defiance ages better than perfection. A child's laughter breaks through, distant, maybe from the village, maybe from imagination, You smile. Even tragedy never fully banishes comedy. The goat proved that once, and the memory insists on proving it again. The grove cools around you, night sinking deeper. The torches are long gone, yet shadows of flame still seem to flicker when you blink. You shift your weight, the ground springy with needles soft enough to make you want to lie down and drift. And you realize this is how legends survive. Not with the blare of trumpets, but with the whisper of stories told in the quiet, when listeners are ready to let the sound carry them into sleep. Good contest, you mutter aloud. The wind answers with a sigh as though applauding politely. You picture Apollo still frowning, Marsyas still grinning, and the goat still bleating whenever the silence gets too heavy. And you let yourself ease back into that silence now, no longer sharp but soft, a blanket rather than a blade. The grove exhales with you, carrying the first music contest not as victory or defeat, but as memory that will not fade. So rest here a little while longer, with the pine's sweet air, the faint hum of leaves, and the goat's echo that somehow feels like a lullaby. The story has been told, the contest remembered, and what lingers is not sorrow or triumph, but stillness, gentle enough to carry you into dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.